we have a scout troop with us here tonight. Gentlemen, how would you like to lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance so we can open our meeting? Could you do that for us? Why don't you stand and face the rest of the audience and lead us in a pledge to our flag, if you would. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job, Scott.
Good job, guys.
Are you members of the famous Troop 460?
Yeah.
Outstanding. And how old are each of you? 9 years old. 10 years old.
I should do third grade.
Okay. Your scoutmaster is very fond of reminding us that of all of the scout troops in the U.S., ours has one of the highest incidences of explorer. In fact, it's 2 or 3 times the national average. I think that's Eagle, excuse me, not explorer, Eagle, which I think is very, very significant. We're so glad you're with us this evening. Thanks, Scouts. Okay. Can we do anything besides citizen comments? Can we even?
Why don't we just start with citizen comments
Let's do
first?
that.
Yeah, that'll take.
Because we're still waiting because of traffic and other issues on I-70 for our quorum, we're going to jump into citizen comments. This would be for any items that aren't on the agenda. If there's anyone here who would like to address the audience and to address us, and now is an opportunity to do that, and we'd ask you to come up to the podium and state your name and your residential address and share with us as you see fit.
Hi, I'm Michelle Cook, and I live outside of town limits in Monrovia. And normally you guys know I'm here for the paper, but for today I just wanted to let you guys know a little bit about what's going on in our area. And I don't want to steal any of Tim's thunder, so I'll be very brief. Recently, you know, the Monrovia Town Center was going through the planning zone, or planning commission out there in Frederick County. And unfortunately, we lost that part of the battle. So now it's going to the Board of County Commissioners. And one of the things that was put out for the citizens that are trying to fight against it is kind of just a snapshot of what's been approved and what's in the pipeline. And right now we're at 13,125 residential units and counting that are going out in our area. So I know the last time we were here, there was like a 5,000 number that was thrown around. 7,143 units have already been approved. And there's another, the 5,982 is pending.
Okay, just for clarity, is that all the Imesville Monrovia development, or is that a combination of multiple developments?
It's a lot of them, and I'll pass this thing out to you guys so you can see what I'm talking about. And the, get back to the microphone. The reason that I decided to step out of my normal box and talk to you guys about this is just because of the impact it's going to have on Mount Airy. There's no way around it because of the road situations and the overflow. There's going to be redistricting with the schools. It's just going to be an absolute nightmare, and it's not just for us that live out in that area, but it's going to trickle out because these people are going to have someplace to go. Going to have someplace to shop, someplace to get their kids to daycare, all whatever you want to list. So just want to let you guys know that. I didn't want to steal Tim's thunder because I know he's probably going to talk about some of this, but just letting you guys know.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Michelle.
Which your point well taken, because I'll reiterate what some of us are aware of. The in-town population is about 9,400, but the greater retail trading area, what we refer to as the community confine, is roughly 3 times that size. between 25 and 30,000 is the effective population that this community services. Anyone else?
It's a mad rush.
Oh my gosh. So everyone's here for the agenda.
Why don't we,
I'll just something real quick. My name's Mike Curry. I live in Conestoga Heights, right across 27. I just want to thank the commission. I see that we've removed the East Ridgeville bypass from the master plan. I think that, you know, maybe one time in the past was something that might have been useful, but obviously with the layout now, it kind of outgrew its usefulness. And I just want to thank the committee for following through, listening to what we had to say, and getting rid of that particular throughway or bypass. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
recommendation you want to jump to
You want to
signs?
plan? Well, or we could do planners.
You can do planners first.
Okay.
That's fine.
Let's see, Tim, we have the Carroll County planner?
Yeah, so.
We do, okay. Well, we'll let both of you go.
Good evening, Planning Commission members.
Very good.
I want to thank Heather and Chairman Butts for coming to the county's Planning Commission meeting on November 13th. We did an overview presentation for our Planning Commission on your town plan update, and Heather and Chairman Butts had some good interaction and dialogue with our Planning Commission. And one thing to report is that our Planning Commission agreed to initiate an amendment to the county's comprehensive plan after your plan is adopted sometime next year or 2015, whenever it may occur, that will open up and do a community plan update for just the environs around Mount Airy to examine what the town has approved and adopted for its vision around its borders. And then, so that's the main decision that was made on the 13th. But that's, not to say that the county, will amend its plan to match 100% what the town is envisioning, but at least the process will be started after your plan is adopted.
Excellent.
So
That's very good.
basically all I have this evening for you.
Thank you.
And your public hearing is still December 4th?
Fourth is our public hearing.
That's
What-
the activities.
Okay.
Tim, one comment that I'll make to share with our audience tonight is that one of the messages we wanted to be sure and send to the Frederick County Planning Commission was that we spent the greater part of 2 to 2.5 years in working on this master plan update. We took it very, very seriously. We realized we needed to retool virtually every aspect of it because our community is at a very strategic time in its development. Some people refer to it as perhaps the fourth quarter. The other comment that we made was that we went to a great deal of effort to go back and look at previous master plans, to go back and look at town surveys, community needs assessments, and to make sure that the vision that we were outlining was, to the extent possible, very responsive to how our residents felt with regard to development, and was also responsive to the challenges that we face in terms of our resources. They were receptive to that, and I think in part that may have been some of the reason that we got the response that we did. It was a very cooperative response, and we were very pleased to hear it. So I just wanted to share, in case there's anyone who's not sure what the vision of this master plan update contains, it's one that's attempting to be as responsive as possible to the preferences that our residents feel with regard to development. Yes, sir.
Tim, for those who don't know me, I'm Councilman Everett. With the previous comment you heard on the Monrovia issue, can you describe to us in the following order, given the number of homes approved, the number of homes under pending zoning approval, can you describe to us in order where the roads, schools, and then water and sewer capacities that come from all of these?
Well, that's a broad question to answer. For just Monrovia, I could touch on some of those issues.
I'll rephrase. From Monrovia and in light of the rest of the other planned development, Liganor 30, 200 homes?
Well, you know, the county's main water supply is the Potomac River. We have a line coming up, you know, New Design Road 85 corridor. Then our wastewater treatment plant is the Ballinger McKinney plant that handles all of the county's wastewater treatment. Certainly, we have an APFO, an adequate public facilities ordinance, that looks at the capacity and the demand on the road network, the school system, you know, the parks and rec system. You know, some of those things are examined to some degree at the rezoning stage, but more intensely at the next stage of development, which is, you know, a preliminary subdivision plan or a site plan. So it's, you know, the impact to facilities and services and infrastructure are certainly examined, but to different degrees at different levels and stages in the development process.
Have they waived any of the adequate public facilities ordinances?
They haven't waived them, but the county has, you know, amended its APFO over the last 3 years.
To make it less restrictive for development?
Yes,
That's a problem.
the standards have been lowered for several components of
That's a problem. It's
infrastructure.
good for developers, it's a problem for us.
So, I mean, let's take roads, for example. If I mean, you add 13,000 homes, say, what's the average per home? 4.2, 4.8, something to that effect?
29, 3.
Okay, so if you add that many homes and that many folks and that many cars, I mean, what are going to be the thoroughfares? I mean, 270's parking lot, right? 70's rather crowded. So, I mean, can you give an idea of where they're planning on putting all these folks?
Well,
Other than, yeah, okay, we'll look at it later. I mean,
well, certainly, you know, the existing road network is there, and whatever traffic tests are triggered by a development proposal, you know, the engineers will look at the impacts to the nearest intersections and what mitigation would be needed to accommodate extra demand on the road network caused by the development approvals. But, you know, when you get down into those details, that's when the specific standards in the APFO ordinance come into play, and that describe what type of mitigation or what level of service is adequate or acceptable, or what will be past approval or not. So it's a pretty complicated issue to kind of just give kind of quick answers. But I can answer any other questions in more detail, you know, next month or in writing or what, but that's kind of a general broad answer to your broad questions. Or
okay, so, I mean, it sounds like they'll figure it out later. They really haven't looked at the amount of impact.
well, I don't really want to.
And I'm paraphrasing, so.
Right.
I
That
didn't put you on the spot.
Yep. People will have different, you know, opinions and perspectives on how development is evaluated and approved. So it's the opinions and perspectives will be all over the place from many different people.
Tim, you're doing a good job. I lowered the air conditioning for you.
Okay, thank you.
Tim's a good guy.
I'm feeling for him right now.
Yeah.
Is there out of Michelle mentioned the 13,000 homes, are all of those approved site plan wise, or are they in various stages? And so the APFO approvals would be, you know, like concurrent? I mean, could you maybe provide, like, at our next meeting?
A breakdown of all the projects and where they are,
and
the status.
The status.
Sure.
And,
Easily done.
and maybe, would that be helpful,
Yeah,
Councilman Everett?
I think it would.
Sure, okay.
And when is your next meeting?
We'll know that a little bit later,
Okay,
but
okay.
I'll let you
Too
know.
December.
And is there in your staff evaluation, do you review, like, for your staff reports, the APFO? Is that something, or do you have like a transportation department? How does it work in the county? We're
Well,
kind of like a one-stop shop
Yeah,
here.
for a rezoning, the zoning ordinance does have a lot of criteria that have to be met or achieved before the decision makers can approve a rezoning. And then when a development plan is submitted, that's when the traffic studies and the traffic tests will be conducted to look at what improvements are needed.
Okay,
But I can touch on that too when I give you a summary of the projects.
okay.
Most of those are in the rezoning stage now. A few are moving forward through the development plan process, but the
Okay.
majority have just gotten the rezoning approved, and a few are moving ahead right now through the review process.
Okay. So when you say zoning, because that's a little bit different
A
than our
rezoning,
zoning.
a
Okay,
rezoning, right. Like the
Okay.
Monrovia Town Center is a rezoning application.
Okay, so does that rezoning application have details as to the exact development? And if the rezoning is successful, that means that the development plan is approved, or they still have to go through the various steps?
No, yeah, I mean, it's a different set of criteria used to evaluate and judge a rezoning request versus a development
Okay,
request, like a site plan or a subdivision request.
okay.
Two totally different ordinances.
Yeah, I think
and-
that would be
and all this.
helpful if you could,
Sure.
outline,
Sure.
the various projects and
Mhm.
where they're
Hey,
at.
Tom, Chris. Hey,
So
Tom.
he'll end up, Tim, you're gonna end
Hey,
up bringing
it's
that back
Chris.
to our
Stand by
next
for a
meeting,
minute.
whenever that is.
Right, yeah, sure will.
Okay, great.
That'll be very useful.
Okay.
All right. Excellent. Thanks,
Okay,
Tim.
sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Airy, yes. Absolutely.
Always look for you.
Absolutely.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Gerhard, and I am the Carroll County Planner for Mount Airy. Just a couple of updates for you. We recently got our official copy of our Land Preservation Park and Recreation Plan. It is a plan that we do for the entire county as well as municipalities. I work with staff as well as all of the planners have worked with their different municipalities. We turned this in, it was due in 2012. We turned it in June of 2012, and the state came back earlier this year and had some questions that they wanted us to update. So we have finally updated everything, and it was actually supposed to come to you at the last month's meeting, but because we have all of our water and sewer craziness of last month, I wanted to make sure that the town got their official final copy.
Good.
Here you go. Sure. I want to thank the commission also for last month, you guys certified that the water and sewer plan was consistent with your current draft master plan. And I just wanted to thank you again for that. It really does help the county move in a cohesive unit together through this process. We are having our public hearing process start on December 5th at 10:30. And but just to let you know the process, in the month of October, I went to all of the planning commissions, and we got letters certifying that everybody was consistent with the individual master plans. Earlier, November 6th, we took it to the County Planning Commission. They certified it as well. Did a briefing last week on the 21st, so on Thursday, for our Board of County Commissioners. So next phase, like I said, will be our public hearing process, and then we have deliberations after that. So it's moving.
Andrea, would you recommend that there's town representation, planning commission representation at that meeting?
At the public hearing? I think that your letter was very well stated in the fact that it was about, that it is it's consistent with your current draft plan, and therefore if anything changes in your draft plan, then we would, subsequently have to change your chapter. You're more than welcome to come if you'd like to come, but I thought that the letter did a really good job. Lastly, we don't have a policy at Carroll County where I present your master plan to our Board of Commissioners. What we do though is I have been reviewing the document, so I have some comments and I'll be providing them to Heather. So, and I know that Linda, who was here at last month's meeting, my supervisor, she will be here at your public hearing on the 4th. Other than that, I don't think that there's anything else. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
As a follow-up, Chairman,
Yes.
I will definitely be at that public hearing just to hear any comments that citizens may have as far as the non-Airy portion of the water and sewer master plan, and if Mr. Flynn is available, he'll be attending as well.
Okay, so let me reach out to the council members that are here in terms of what remains on our agenda. Without a quorum in place, what's the recommendation for our
We
proceedings?
just received legal counsel that you may proceed, you may vote under quorum. However, if there is an objection, you will have to revote. If you can move forward, you can vote under quorum, Robert Rules of Order. Hearing no
Okay.
objections, it stands.
Okay, so as long as we all vote the same.
Yeah, if there's an objection, you will have to take the matter up again.
Okay.
Sorry for confusion, everybody. We do have another appointment coming, and this should be a very rare instance that we do not have a quorum.
Yeah.
So do we want
So
to?
let me ask this. There's quite a healthy turnout tonight. Are most of you here with regard to the special exception? The substitution of non-conforming use for 807 East
Show
Ridgeville
hands.
Boulevard?
Maybe show hands. So you can
With a
see
show
that.
of hands, could I see that?
That's the majority.
Okay. And how many of you are here for ordinance 21317, proposed amendment to allow a commercial sign business as a special exception use?
I think
Okay.
we need two.
All right, so why don't we go ahead and do the
Exception.
special exception
Okay.
item, since all of you are here.
So, who's presenting this to staff? Wanna
Are
discuss
you,
this first?
are you presenting, or is,
Okay.
after you present? Okay.
We have no functional microphones over there, so that's why I'm changing things up a little.
Okay.
Okay, the following is a staff report for case MAA 1301. It's a substitution of a non-conforming use. The location is 807 East Ridgeville Boulevard, Mount Airy, Maryland. The applicant is Prudence Lodge Holding Corporation, or the Freemasons. The zoning of the parcel is residential existing, and the acreage is 0.25 acres. The current use is a church, and the proposed use is a fellowship hall for a Masonic lodge and a substitution of the church use. The subject property is currently under the care of the Warren Love Community Church, Love Chapel. The chapel was constructed in approximately 1903 and originally started as the Love Chapel, which became Warren Methodist Church, then Warren United Methodist Church. The church closed in 2007 due to lagging membership and the inability to maintain dues and attendance in the denomination. The congregation reopened its doors as Warren Community Church Love Chapel in January 2008 with the hopes to reestablish its congregation. Although the Warren Community congregation no longer meets at this location, the church continues to be operational through the rental of its congregational seating area. The Prudence Lodge Holding Corporation is requesting a special exception for a substitution of an existing non-conforming use under the town zoning ordinance 1112-6, which allows a non-conforming use to be substituted through a special exception from the Board of Appeals, given that the use would be a lesser use with a lesser impact on the community. The applicant desires to utilize the church structure as a fellowship hall for a Masonic lodge. This use would be classified as a fraternal organization by the town. The long-standing church structure is situated along East Ridgeville Boulevard and currently holds the zoning classification of residential existing, or RE. The current zoning of the subject property does not allow the proposed use as a use permitted by right, nor does it provide a special exception allowance for fraternal organizations. Fraternal organizations are an allowable special exception use within higher density zoning classifications of R5 and R7 within the town limits of Mount Airy. As previously stated, a non-conforming use may be substituted given that the use would be a lesser use with a lesser impact on the community. While there are no specific criteria to be met through the evaluation of a substitution of the non-conforming use process, the general standards provided in Town Code Section 111262E must be met. Below is an evaluation of the standard of a lesser use and lesser impact and the general standards. This evaluation is based upon the information provided by the applicant. According to the town code, this special exception may be granted when the Board of Appeals finds from a preponderance of evidence produced at the hearing that the proposed use, including its nature, intensity, and location, is in harmony with the intent of the town master plan and the orderly and appropriate development of the district. The applicant explains that the nature of the activities of the church included Sunday morning services, Bible studies, Sunday school, weekly fellowship events on both weekdays and weeknights, and on occasions, Weddings, baptismal, and funeral services were also held. While there is no historic record of attendance at these services and events, the seating capacity of the congregation area is approximately 95 persons. The applicant has explained that neighbors have indicated the church was frequently full. As explained by the applicants, the nature of the proposed use on the premises will be largely for lodge meetings. The proposed frequency of the lodge meetings will be 4 times a month, held on Tuesdays, and will vary in attendance from 8 members to 25 members, depending upon the nature of the meeting. The applicants have stated that there will be no meetings on Sunday. Based upon the information provided by the applicant as to the proposed operation of the fellowship hall for the Masonic Lodge, the nature and intensity qualifies as a lesser use with a lesser impact on the community as compared to the previous use of a church. The location of the church property is unique as it is nestled amongst existing residents on a residential street of medium-density development. The non-conforming characteristic of the historic use and placement of the structure on the property creates a challenge when evaluating harmony with the intent of the master plan and the orderly and appropriate development of the district. Given the nonconformity surrounding this property and the historic nature of the church use and the impact on the community, it can be determined that the proposed use as a Masonic Lodge is in harmony with the provisions under Town Code Section 112-6D regarding the substitution of nonconforming uses that apply to all residential zoning districts. That adequate water supply, sewage disposal, storm drainage, and fire and police protection are or can be provided for the use. There is no expectation that water and sewer use will increase from the previous use as a church. Likewise, there is no reason to anticipate that the proposed use will create a greater demand with regard to storm drainage and fire and police protection, given the nature of the use of the building. Any future improvements that would impact storm drainage would come under the review and approval of the Carroll County Bureau of Resource Management. That the use of adjacent land and buildings will not be discouraged and the value of adjacent land and buildings will not be impaired by the location, nature, and height of building walls and fences. The applicant has indicated that there will be only minimal alterations made to the exterior of the building, with an emphasis on preserving the building's essential character. There are no plans to erect any walls or fences or modify the nature or height of the existing structure. Any alterations will be brought forward to the Planning Commission to ensure compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood and compliance with the special exception if so granted by the Board of Appeals. That the use will have proper location with respect to existing or future streets giving access to it and will not create traffic congestion or cause industrial or commercial traffic to use residential streets. This historic lot of record is not only non-conforming with respect to its use, but also with regard to its lot configuration and building placement upon the lot. As such, parking is not provided on the property in its current condition. Additionally, a current means of ingress and egress to the rear of the property does not exist. The applicant has stated that the parishioners historically parked on the shoulders of Ridgeville Boulevard. This condition might be acceptable if another church would become fully operational. However, the substitution to another use requires staff to ensure that improvements such as off-street parking, curb, gutter, apron, driveway, landscaping, and sediment control be addressed through a site plan submittal. The applicants are proposing the installation of two accessible spaces in the front yard area of the lot. A parking plan has not been provided for review at this time. Staff would recommend that in order to be compliant with town regulations, a site plan showing the required parking areas be submitted for review and approval by the Planning Commission prior to establishing operations for a Masonic Lodge on this property. The proposed use, if approved, is anticipated to have a lesser impact than the previous use based upon the information provided by the applicant and not expected to create traffic congestion. The use of this property as a fellowship hall is not considered a commercial or industrial use, and there is therefore no expectation that it would cause industrial or commercial traffic to use residential streets. That the specific standards set forth for each particular use for which a special exception may be granted have been met, except in the case of non-conforming structures where the board determines that no adverse impact will result. There are no specific standards for substitution of nonconforming use other than the criteria set forth in Town Code Section 11262D. The specific criteria provided in Town Code Section 11262F3 relating to the establishment of a fraternal organization in the R5 or R7 zoning district would not necessarily apply in this case. These criteria pertain to the minimum standards of lot design and building setbacks, of which are also non-conforming in this particular case. Upon evaluation of this special exception, the board will determine the impact of the nonconformity and any related impact. Staff recommendations. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission forward a favorable recommendation to approve the special exception request to substitute the existing non-conforming use of the property from a church to a fellowship hall for a Masonic lodge to the Board of Appeals, with the condition that the required off-street parking is addressed in the site plan to be reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission. And that concludes the staff report, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is here, as are his representatives.
Okay. Would you like to come and address the commission?
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening. My name's Clark Schaefer. I'm a lawyer representing the Prudence Lodge, and my address is 73 East Main Street, Westminster. This site is interesting and probably would be a good question for a graduate school planning. It involves, as you well know, an existing long-standing use on a difficult piece of property. And if we were here writing on a blank slate, we would not be discussing the things we would do now. In fact, if we were here writing on a blank slate, I'm sure the church would have never received approval to put the church there in the first place, because, you know, it's on a residential street, the property falls off in the back. But in 1903, though that was not the case. So I think the salient point here, which is well pointed out in the staff report, is that this is a long-standing, non-conforming use, and we have, in my experience, a serendipitous circumstance here, and that is that we have a user that fits, and that's not easy. To find a user that would fit this site, want to pay for it, want to invest time and money into it, to make it, to preserve it, to keep it, the physical structure there, preserve its historic aspects, and the kicker, so to speak, and can qualify truthfully and fully as a lesser type impact, or equal or lesser. Now, does that mean that there are no concerns related to this use? No, there are, and your staff has pointed them out: parking, traffic, that kind of thing. But this use is lesser. It clearly is lesser. We are willing to work with the town to address reasonable conditions that can be met. But there's not a lot you can do. You can't put a parking lot on the site. You can't. I mean, I guess maybe you could put a parking garage on there with $1 million, but not realistically. So we appreciate your time, and we are here tonight to ask for a favorable recommendation to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals so that we might proceed to that level, put on our case, and we understand that we will be revisiting with the staff and with you specific conditions and specific site development issues that may arise. We have with us many members of our lodge. We're prepared to tell you the history, etc. The lodge has been in the town for about 100 years. 122. Only 122. And That really concludes my presentation unless you have any questions or, and I have Ed Durfala here, who's a representative member of the lodge who could address maybe any specific questions you might have.
Can I ask a question? Where's your lodge currently located?
We're at 1 Paradise Ave. The building, most folks know the building that housed the movie theater at one time. So right at the corner of 1 Paradise Ave, the building was originally built as a Masonic Hall. Sometime during the Great Depression, the Freemasons lost ownership of the building, and then the building, the lower levels have been used for a variety of uses ever since. But the Masons continued to meet in the upper level for all these years. Most folks don't even know that there's a Masonic lodge there. But we've been fortuitous, and the owners of the building subsequent to the initial change of ownership from the Masons to whoever the first purchaser was, I'm not sure who that was. The owners have been very gracious in allowing us to stay there. The rents have been reasonable and affordable to us. Currently, the current building owner is Mr. Iliano. We don't currently have a lease. He's worked with us, and we're very much appreciative of the fact that he's allowed us to stay there. But right now, because of our circumstances and what the circumstances have been really since the Great Depression, we're looking for a little more certainty in where our lodge will be for the next 122 years.
What's the size of your lodge, and what's the average attendance at your meetings and functions?
Size of the lodge in terms of membership, we have about 75 members. Because of the way Masonic lodges operate, the majority of the membership does not come to every meeting. We usually have about 25 members or less at our meetings twice a month. We meet on the first and third Tuesdays every month, excluding July and August. So at those 2 meetings a month, we have 25 members or less. We have 2 additional meetings on the second and fourth Tuesdays, and that generally involves just the officers that come and take care of things that can't wait to the regular meetings.
So where do you guys park right now if you have in your current lodge? Because parking seems to be a concern for this, so I'm just curious.
Right. Well, at the moment, there are about 10 parking spaces around the building. We utilize those parking spaces. The church next door has allowed us to use some of their parking spaces, and that's accommodated our needs.
So have you thought about parking with us to date so far, moving into this property?
But we have thought about parking, and parking is a concern. The lot does not lend itself to very much additional parking. We would like to add 1 or 2 handicap parking spaces for use of our members, if the site will allow even that. But because of the history of the church, and because historically the church has used the on-street parking, we're hoping we can continue that. Our membership is so much less than what you had with the church that we would have considerably less on-street parking than the church did and would if a church were to resume.
What are the hours of the meetings or any other types of events that you might be holding there?
Well, we're in the evenings. We're usually 7:30 to, we're probably out of there by 9:30 or 10.
Do you have any other types of events?
No, just really just the 4 meetings a month. We might have, if some pressing issue arises, there might be a meeting of 2 or 3 members, but not more than that.
Okay.
Really is not, the lodge is not intended to be used as a social hall. We don't have large gatherings or anything like that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Would it be possible for you all to reach an agreement with some of the commercial properties up by, say, where Mount Airy Plaza is, up towards Ridge Court for parking? And then you could walk from there to the facility?
Yeah, I don't know. We have not had any discussions with any of the property owners, and I certainly couldn't
speculate as to how successful we might be.
Okay. Any other questions for these gentlemen? Okay.
Thank you, John.
Someone else who's wants to come up and speak?
I'm Dick Ishler from Turning Point Commercial Real Estate. I represent the Baltimore-Washington Conference of the United Methodist Church. And tonight we have with us the Chairman of the Board of Trustees, Anthony Love, and the conference's Secretary, Paul Eichelberger. So if there are any questions from the conference, they are here to answer any questions that you may have.
Well, I have a general question. How do the members of the church feel about, this potential use?
I am not in a position to answer that.
Okay, are there any members here?
Of the former church,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't know them.
You have a hand there? For the one hand.
Sure, come up and speak. Also, are there any neighbors who live in the area? Okay, we'll let you speak next.
Shall I let the neighbors go first?
No, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Jerry Dorsey, born and raised here in Mount Airy in Dorseytown. There's a tremendous amount of history here in Mount Airy. This church, for one, I'll start at the present and work backwards. And I'd like to thank you guys for your favorable permission on the use of this church as it's been requested. This church, I was pretty much born and raised, grew up in this church. My children were baptized in this church. It has always been a long-standing church in the community, well-attended, 60, 70. It holds about 95 people. I think more than that attended without the fire marshal showing up saying you were overcrowded. And this church has a lot of benches, pews in there with plaques of the individuals that are now deceased or prominent members that were given notoriety in their religious aspects in the church. Those pews and things are still there. Those community members' families are still here in this area. I think they would love to see this church stay in the building and in the condition that it is, well, a little better condition that it is. My saying that is Carroll County, in its past history, seems to have had a lack of preserving buildings of this nature. The black community in this county has had things strewn aside haphazardly, maybe because of just there wasn't enough representation to make them become prominent features. This building has that chance now to do that. There was another church on Gillis Falls Road that I attended at 5 and 6 years of age that is now defunct. I think it was a part of the United Methodist Church. That property somehow became demolished. It was sold. There is now a family member there, a residence there, with a graveyard in the front property. Why would a homeowner want a graveyard in the front property? Is it being used for Halloween venues? I don't think it is. But would you want to own a graveyard I wouldn't want a graveyard on my property. So I think some of these properties are being sold off with less attention to the historical aspect of the people that have been grown up in these areas, are buried in these areas. People are still attending their families and their lost spouses and loved ones in these church properties. Robert Moton High School in Carroll County, Westminster, is another black school that I attended that is now being maintained, I think, in Carroll County as a public paid building. There is a group of people that are maintaining a yearly organizational meeting on Robert Moton's, the workings of this being a school for 1st through 12th grade. Another facility in this area, Mount Airy Quail Ridge Inn Restaurant. My father is 89 years old. He went to school there in that building. That restaurant, when it was being renovated, had numerous phone calls with people wanting the steeple off of that church, off of that restaurant. I was one of them. The owner did not know why everyone wanted this until we were told. He was told that this was a black school for all Negroes 89 years ago. My father went to school there. I'm not sure any of these buildings, and I may be incorrect, have any historical knowledge or recording that would be beneficial to the county or any historian that's looking for this type of information. So I would really love to see this building be used in the venue as being requested, and that the members and community around it accept it for the history it provides and the people that are still living in this area that would love to see that building stay there. Okay, thank you.
Who owns the property now?
It's the Baltimore Washington Conference of the United Methodist Church.
That's what I suspected, okay.
Can I ask, Heather,
Yes.
your staff recommendation doesn't mention any restrictions on building renovations or remodeling or anything like that.
There is not listed as any conditions at this time. That may be something that the planning commission may want to add if they wish to do so.
Okay.
I think you want to take the neighbors first, and then we'll talk about it.
Several of you raised your hands as neighbors living in the neighborhood. If you'd like to speak and address us, we're certainly willing for you to.
Hi, I'm Scott White. I live at 806 East Ridgeville Boulevard, which is across the street from the church. Well, second, there is lack of historical preservation because the current building that was on my property was an African-American school. And I do have some of the chalkboards from there if you would be interested. I've offered them up to the Mount Airy Historical Society before. Maybe we can touch base on that later. But anyway, I guess my wife and I lived on that street for 31 years. I've lived at my current residence since 2009. I don't know, I take a lot of pride in that street. I feel like it has had some rough times over the years. I was very involved with the pre-construction. I had a change in use on my property and kind of did a hard knock school of working with the town on that. So for better or for worse, it turned out to be a good project, I think. At the same time, my neighbor, he was also doing a remodel on his house, a large addition, kind of made that look pretty nice. And then recently with the new construction of the home across the street, took care of about a 6-year eyesore. So anyway, I guess the whole point of my spiel of my introduction is that the street's come a long way, 10 to 15 years. And although I love the church across the street, I just don't know if I agree, my wife and I, with the current use. We just kind of feel like we like the use of a church, the use of a fraternal or a Masonic lodge, for say. We just feel like it might have a negative impact on our property value. I know if I was looking for a house, I wouldn't think twice about moving across the street from a church, a lodge. Maybe I might put some thought into that. So that kind of brings me into the staff recommendation. So paragraph A, the staff report. Excuse me. So paragraph A, I get that was information provided from the applicant. Again, with my history living on the street, I haven't really had a chance to talk to any of my neighbors, so they might agree with me or disagree with me. I can especially comment from the period of 2008 to 2012. It was a dwindling church population. It was basically a Sunday morning service event and very limited Saturday activities, such as a church dinner or something like that. I didn't really have a problem with parking, but parking was definitely an issue. Off-street parking is very limited. I had to put in sidewalks in front of my house, so there really is no safe place to park. It's a limited shoulder there as of right now, so when you do park, you're parked out very close to the center line. So when I would make a right or a left out of my driveway, it's hard to see. Again, 805, I believe, is the new house across the street. They have a short driveway and do utilize the off-street parking for their specific residents. I know 809, he's here tonight. He might also speak as well. He definitely utilizes the off-street parking in front of his house. And then David Spencer, he has an empty lot that is for sale. I really don't know his opinions, but if a house goes in there, I feel they would also need to utilize that off-street parking as well. So again, I just feel like the nature of the activities might have been a little, and the frequency of the use may have been a little inflated based on the staff report, which was based on the applicant's information. So that's kind of all I had on paragraph A. Going into paragraph D, The staff report, it did recommend a site plan that would identify the requirements and improvements such as off-street parking, curb, gutter, apron, driveway, landscaping, and settlement control. I'm glad the staff had that recommendation. I know I made the argument of, well, this guy didn't have to do it in the past, why do I have to do it for my property with the change in use? And the response was, I wasn't in office then, stuff was done, I understand that, but moving forward, we're gonna try to be fair to everyone. So this is a similar thing, it's a change in use. I know, speaking with the gentleman that built 805 East Ridgeville Boulevard, he had to go through the same stuff that I did. So, I mean, I'm glad to see at least everyone's being treated fairly as far as the town process, town code. Moving on, I would like to add the recommendation to include potential sidewalks in that. That's my little soapbox, save everyone some time. I'm glad it's in the, it's actually a proposed project in the master plan draft. So, anyway, I'll move forward off of that. But anytime I get a chance, I like to plug sidewalks on our street.
So how do you feel about the renovations downtown? The extra sidewalks?
I like all sidewalks. I mean,
Good.
there's I like to walk to places, and right now I'll walk down. My sister lives down the street, and my parents live down there, but I won't walk up. No shoulders, blind turns, and a lot of traffic. So, I mean, I would like to. I got kids and just don't like pushing a stroller on that street. So, that's another day, another topic. So anyway, I'd also consider stormwater management. I don't know if that is actually addressed in settlement control, but pictures down, but there's currently no downspouts or gutter on the building, and if we are talking about putting in a potential parking lot, there is a stream at the bottom of that lot, so you would get stormwater runoff. I know that could be minimized through dry wells, stuff like that, so just like to bring that to people's attention. And the applicants did propose the 2 parking spots we've talked about them tonight in the front of the front yard area of that church. I mean, I feel like I like the church. I like the way it looks. I mean, it is kind of a rough spot for a church as far as parking and everything goes, but I think asphalting the whole front yard is the option. I mean, it might as well look like a storefront at that point. I just feel like it would, I mean, that's kind of where I'm coming at with the taking that approach, making it look very commercial and just the effect on the property value. And then, I mean, I don't want to recite town code to you guys or anything like that. You know better than I do, but just some of the research I did, town code 112, section 7, paragraph D. It states, so the applicant, that proposed parking, I would assume that you would have to back up into the street. And quote from that, parking area must be arranged so that there is no need for motorists to back into local streets unless it's for residential use. So I feel like that would be a code violation in itself right there. And then moving forward, I understand this isn't a site plan review, but in reviewing that chapter of the town code, clubs, lodges, and other similar places shall have a minimum of 1 space per 3 persons capacity, or 1 space per 100 square feet of the floor area of the meeting room, whichever is greater. So I think we're falling into the 1-to-3 ratio. So I know the staff report mentioned 25 members, so that's quick 8 spots. In addition to that, I know Michelle, she brought up, I mean, it's a big concern. We're talking, we'll throw out 13,000, I think it was the number that was used in the room tonight. So these gentlemen, they're making an investment on this property. I mean, obviously for a long-term use, they said themselves they'd like to have their lodge there for the next 120 years. So let's look at long-term numbers. I mean, in the report, it does say the congressional capacity was 95 people. So that's, what is that, about 32 parking spaces if we hold them to the town code on that. So again, I understand it's not a site plan review tonight, but would like to bring that to everyone's attention. Where else am I? So based on the plot of survey that was provided, although it doesn't show topography at all, it is the streets up here and it does slope downward. It looks like you may be able to access the lot through Wooden Bridge Lane. Again, I don't live off Wooden Bridge Lane, don't access it, so I don't want to comment on the use of it, but I feel like if that is a proposed, I guess, solution in the future to put off-street parking behind the church, I feel like they might want to take in consideration, it's not a town road, possible improvements, I guess, to that lane if there's going to be increased traffic use on it. And I guess lastly, there is a privacy fence in the front yard. I mean, this might be me being nitpicky, but it's a 6-foot fence that runs past the front of the building, which is a code violation, and it's been an eyesore, so maybe we can work with that. and a block retaining wall that's seen its better days that elevates two different properties. But again, in closing, I just would like to make sure that although yes, it's a new use, I'd like to make sure everyone's treated fairly as far as being held to the town code the same way that I was and other neighbors were in the future. That's it.
Thank you.
Well presented. Any other neighbors?
Hi, I'm Kevin Busey. I live at 809 East Ridgeville Boulevard, which is directly next door to the proposed thing. We've discussed with the other gentleman here several times about the use of this as a Masonic lodge. Off-street parking is a huge issue, was a huge issue with the church. Several times I had to go over to the church and ask them to move out of my front lawn so that I could park my cars there and everything. The one big issue that I had with it was the use of the easement, especially during the summer times. I have 4 kids, 3 of them young, 10 to 5. So we play down at the easement comes down and then to the left to go to the dinks. I don't know if anyone knows them, but back there we play at the garage. There's a 1-story building on this sheet here. So that's my lot. That's my easement that I'm responsible for. And then the shed, and then there's another shed and the stream back there. That's where we play. Because of the orientation of the land there, our backyard is basically a slope going down. So we can't play in our backyard. We obviously can't play in our front yard because we have so much traffic coming up from, I think it's a AAA or something like that at the end of the street. And that's been one of my issues as long as Scott's. We walk across the street. We walk across, over to Walmart and stuff like that all the time with the 3 little kids. We stay to the side, and sidewalks would be great to use that. But there's a lot of traffic on that road, and they don't abide by the speed limits. I think it's 15 up and 30 down. They're doing 50, 60 miles an hour down and up, and it's a huge problem with me. I know the Masonic laws, we're kind of speaking on, I'm going off topic, but I know they wouldn't have a problem with the speed limits, and they would abide by all the speed limits and everything. But the use of the easement would be my biggest issue with the kids being down below, and we've talked about that before. So as long as they abide by the use of it and know that the kids are going to be down there, I don't necessarily have that big of an issue of it. But off-street parking is one of the major things that Scott brought up.
Can I ask a clarifying question? The easement you're referring to, is that the wooden?
Yeah, Wooden Bridge Lane is
that what you mean?
mostly on my property, and then the property next door.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Very good.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. Majority of you probably don't know me, but a lot of you see my face anyhow. And most of you know me as, the name is Dink. And I live at 1420 Wooden Bridge Lane. I'm like a dinosaur in the neighborhood. I'm one of the oldest ones that still live there. But, like everybody else, has their issues and their complaints, and the wants and the don'ts. Well, I wouldn't want to see the church go. That's one thing. I don't want to see it sit there and rot and go down to the ground either, like it has in the past few years. And nobody really wants to spend the money on keeping it floating. But these people here does, and I don't have a problem with that. And for the traffic, that's going to maintain no matter me, them, or anybody else is going to have any say to it. And for the parking, it never stopped the church before. It never stopped some of the other events going on. It never stopped people to turn around visiting. They always found a place to park, whether it's clear to the upper end or clear to the bottom. So back to the thing, the problem at hand, I don't have a problem with them moving in there. If they need some extra parking at the bottom of their property, just as long as they respect my driveway, as long as they respect my neighbors, respect the kids, They won't have much complaints out of me or my neighbors. Because somebody's gonna buy it and they're gonna do something with it eventually. That's a guaranteed thing. So, I agree with Scott on a lot of things that's been changed around there in the years and stuff. There's gonna be a lot more changes in that neighborhood. And right at the present moment, some of the changes we won't probably see for another 5 years, 10 years, maybe 20 years. But still, like I said, I don't have a problem with these guys. I don't even know none of them. They've talked to me several times, and just like other people's came to me and talked to me. But unless y'all got a better plan for that building down there, I don't really see where y'all really have a problem letting them have the spot. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other neighbors? Or anyone else wish to give their opinion?
Good evening, Mount Airy. My name's James Stargell. I've been in Mount Airy now almost a quarter of a century. I think we're hitting like 23, 24 years at this point. Involved with the town government here as chairman of the Recycling Sanitation Commission. Worked for the federal government as a proud FAA employee. Retired Sergeant Major from the United States Army. And I'm a Freemason. Go to church here. So a couple of points that I'd like to bring out. Number one is I'd like to talk just very, very briefly about history. We've talked about history of the facility that we would like to acquire at the church. I'd like to talk a little bit about history of the place that we're at now. We've been in that place since basically before cars were invented. So with horse and buggy, we didn't have parking complaints, and as long as I've been a member, we've had no parking complaints where we're at now. We're very respectful of our neighbors, the businesses around there. I like the councilman's suggestion about working with the businesses on top of the hill to work with a use of something to use between 7:30 and 9:30 at night. I think that would be a great arrangement. The point that the gentleman here brought out about not being able to back up into a public road is a good point. It's a safety point. So we could end up having the folks back into the parking space so they drive out, nose out. That eradicates that issue. The word fraternity. A lot of people have some confusion and complaints about, or thoughts about the difference between fraternity and a church and usage. A church is a fraternity itself. It's a fraternity of believers, whether it's a Christian church, Jewish church, Muslim church, whatever. It is a fraternity of believers. The term fraternity is a legal term in town code as to what is and what isn't a church, what isn't a fraternity. All Freemasons are believers in God. We all believe in a supreme being. We're not a church. We don't ever say that we are a church. It's one of the things we don't discuss is what denomination we are amongst each other. Some of my lodge brothers and I, we don't know what church we go to. We don't care. We're not here for that purpose, but we are a religious organization. We have opening and closing prayers. We have an open King James Bible, Holy Bible out when we have our meetings. I'm a very, very proud Freemason. My wife and I have talked about this. We've been in town for over 100 years. I don't know if I'm going to be in town for the next 100 years, but I'd certainly like to believe that our fraternity is going to be. And beyond that, I'd like to have my children, my sons, my grandsons, to be able to go up in this fraternity. Masons have a motto, and that motto is to make a good man a better man. And that's one of the things that we believe very highly in. One of the questions that was brought up is about the children. One of the things that we as a lodge do, and Freemasons in Maryland, we're very involved with something called the CHIP program, where we've gone to some of the town events, some of the carnivals, we've gone to some of the firehouses, and we perform a service where children come in, they get fingerprinted, photographed, a DNA swab. We put all that information on a disc that is Amber Alert format. We give all that information to the parents and we wipe it off the computer that we generated that with. And if on the unfortunate incident ever happens, then the parents have something that they can go and use with the police to help with their children. We've never done that at the lodge. We don't ever intend to do that at a new location. But that is a service that we do free of charge to the community. And over the last couple of years we've done this, I think we're just about close to 1,000 children that we've done. So this is the type of folks that you have in your community that's here in town already. We've been in town for 100 years. This is the type of folks that you're going to be having moving just across the street. We would like to very much buy this property. Masonry is a very big thing about history. If you ever watch any of the History Channel specials about Freemasonry, we've had 11 U.S. presidents, 16 signers of the Declaration of Independence. We're very historical. We're very mindful of history. And this being a historic church, we're going to be very respectful and mindful of its history as well. I think we marry the two together. I think it would make a good fit for everybody involved. Unless there's any questions of me? Thank you. Yes?
Will y'all upgrade the outside appearance a little bit to blend in with the rest of the modern look of the neighborhood?
Would we upgrade to have a modern look with the neighborhood?
Yes.
I believe we would. I believe what we would do is we would talk to our neighbors, find out if there's something. I mean, we don't put up lights or anything like that. Obviously, the area needs some cleaning up. I mean, instantly, anything we do that would clean up. But we would do things with decorum. We would do things respectful. And then we would participate with our neighbors. If this is a property that we're buying, that we're going to invest a lot of our money as well as our time and effort in there, we want to make sure we blend in right along with the rest of the community. We want the rest of the community to be proud that they have Freemasons there. Did I answer that?
Well, pretty much somewhat, but still kind of concerned on what are you referring to besides the landscaping. We're not pressing too much on the landscaping part of it as much as trying to make sure the building will fit in with some of like Scott's house, transparency-wise, don't create his place, my face, my neighbor's face, stuff like that. That's one of the purposes why I would like for somebody to do something with it besides the place sitting there with the painting.
Right.
Okay.
So,
It would never look worse than what it looks today. I mean, this is going to be our clubhouse. This is something that we would put a lot of pride and respect in. So if anything, its condition will improve, not degrade.
so the question I have that I think I'm building on Mr. Dink, what you ended up saying is, are you going to improve the facade to fit into the existing environment from what it's currently looking as now?
We would look into that. That's a question that's a little further down the road that we haven't thought of yet. If we made any changes ourselves, we would definitely talk with our neighbors on either side and get input. Right now, we don't have anything in mind, like, oh, we're going to change this, or we're going to add that, or we pretty much like how the outside of the building looks, historical as it is.
Right, because I think something that I heard from the audience is that they'd like to maintain the historical aspects of it, but that's kind of hard to make it fit into the existing neighborhood.
It'll be bad. But new coat would make it look more brighter than what we
Right. There might be a new coat of paint, but not a change of paint color.
I'm just
There
trying
might
to
be.
clarify your point of, were they thinking facade changes, or were they, just, like you said, cleaning it up, a new coat of paint, fixing some of the
Right,
structural
fix a broken window
aspects
with
of
a
it?
new window,
Right.
but not a change of window.
Gotcha.
Okay. The stained glass that's in the back, we're leaving the stained glass. We would like the stained glass to remain. So from the outside, it would be fixed up, but not changed up. Okay, any other questions?
Scott brought this up. There's the 6-foot high fence that we currently back out. Maybe that's a code violation, Scott. I don't know. But so we back out, and I'd like that fence. I've tried to email and talk to the county about that, the town about that before. But, and the stone wall next is a big. But,
Yeah, the fence is falling down. It's something we're not married to.
I guess regardless, it's a lot better than the vacant house that's out on that street for 5-6 years. It has a pretty known drug background, but so I mean, this from looking at that, I mean, this thing sitting empty looks like a jewel to me. So I mean, is more than a coat of paint on it, though, rotten wood, stuff like that, so.
This report says you have 4 meetings a month. Is that what you've been doing for the last 100 years?
Basically for the last 100 years. We keep records. Masons are builders, and we keep very intimate records on all of our meetings, meeting times, who was there, things like this. So it's actually been 2 meetings per month on the months of every month, with the exception of July and August. We're closed. We go home for the summer. And then we have a practice night on 2 Tuesday nights, and the practice nights are the officers of the lodge. Generally, the officers are about 10 members that'll show up, and we do anything from administration to cleaning up the facility, things like that. But the meetings are 2 times a month, and that's been pretty consistent for, I think the only time that we've changed that was during World War II. And we have records that show we've done some changes like that during the Great War, but that's it. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. In the Mason's assessment of the property, has there been a group of individuals who've taken a look at the condition of the property and done an assessment as to what changes, what improvements would be necessary? And have you even put a dollar value to that? Do you have a sense of what you would do? Could you share that with us in a general way for our benefit as well as the neighbors who are here?
Let me defer to some of my brothers that are a little more expert on that topic than I am.
Okay.
We have done a general assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, at some time in the fairly recent past, there were some improvements made to the foundation as well as to the substructure of the floor. So the floor is in good condition. We've taken a look at the church. The interior of the church has been renovated and maintained over time. So it actually has a drop ceiling similar to this. We've looked inside for signs of termite damage or signs of other damage that could be a problem. And structurally, the church is very sound. The improvements that we see that would need to be made are actually in the rear of the building, where the original stone foundation needs some point up and may need replacing, or parts of it may need to be replaced. There's some upgrades to plumbing that we think probably will need to be made. The plumbing's been there for a long time. We plan on replacing the heating system. It's currently an oil heat system. We'll replace that with a heat pump. One of the changes that folks would notice would be that the oil tank that's located on the side of the building will disappear. The exterior heat pump unit would be screened in at the rear of the building instead, so that wouldn't be something that you see from the street. The majority of the improvements that we would make to the property would be cosmetic on the outside. I think that all the members of the lodge are in agreement that the 6-foot stockade style fence needs to come down. It's not attractive, and it is a safety hazard for folks in the community. That would come down. The chain link fence would come down. The fascia boards around the church need to be replaced. At some point in the future, the roof will need to be repainted, although we did an inspection and have not found any signs of water infiltration. So from a structural standpoint, the church really is in pretty good shape. Like I said, it has had improvements at some time, probably within the last 10 years. The goal of our fraternity would be to maintain the appearance of a church. It would be cleaned up, it would be freshened up, it would look like, it wouldn't look like a new building, but it would, if it needs, when it needs painted, eventually it will need painting, probably sooner rather than later. We'll get a new coat of paint. The rotting wood on the exterior will be replaced and painted. But the goal really is to make it look like a nice, neatly maintained church and preserve the historic character of that church. As I said, the interior has been renovated over time, and we would need to make some renovations to the interior to adapt it to our purposes. That wouldn't be visible to anyone from the outside. The stained glass windows will remain. The windows will actually remain exactly the way they are. The steeple will remain. To anyone driving by, the only differences they would notice would be that there were
that the building was maintained and cleaned up. Grass would be kept cut and that sort of thing. One other thing I did want to just add to what Jim said is that because our fraternity attracts people that have a strong interest in history, we actually have quite a few members that have good ideas for preservation and have even been involved in some preservation projects in the past. So we have a good knowledge base within the fraternity for what it will take to restore this church to the condition that it was in when it was really more actively serving the community. Oh, and one other thing that I did want to point out. I certainly appreciate Scott's comments. We understand how difficult it can be when you have parking in your neighborhood. So we are very conscious of that, and equally conscious of his comment that he likes the idea of keeping the church there. And I think that's kind of the predicament that the town is in and the neighbors are in and everyone else is in, is how do you keep a church without having the parking issues that are associated with a church. And we think our use is a good compromise where we can maintain the building, maintain that historic appearance of a church, and have much less impact in terms of parking and traffic than you would if it actually was a church. And there's certainly, if the church were to come down and someone were to build a house, there are no guarantees that they wouldn't have quite a bit of on-street parking with their home as well.
Okay. We need to wrap this up, but Scott,
So
go ahead.
quick question for you before you leave. I know that it's been said a few times now that on average the members are about 25, give or take. What is the maximum amount of members that you've had going to any type of meeting, and has there been a frequency where it's been more than one instance in a period of 12 months where you've had more than 25?
Yeah, I've been a member for about 2.5 years. I've never seen more than 25. I don't know if any of the members can speak to that.
I can speak. I can say that I've been a member for 21 years, and I've never seen more than 25, maybe 30 people. But I would say that if we are successful in getting the zoning, that our Grand Lodge will want to come dedicate the building, which is a public ceremony. But our plans are is that if we are successful, they will want to come. We will bring buses. There won't be any on-street parking at that. I would imagine at that event, because it's a public event, it's very, very, very public. We live in Cornerstone for the Capitol building, so the Grand Master of Maryland would come, and there would probably be 75 to 100 people there. But as I say, we're not going to park on the street. That will be bussed in, and that will be a one-time event. We don't really like to see them too often, but that would be the only time that I would know that we would actually have that kind of crowd. We're not planning on having huge dinners and all this other stuff, because the site is just not conducive to that.
Okay.
Yeah, really, it's the nature of our lodge is that the majority of our activities are not held in the lodge. We get out in the community, do the CHIP program, we have dinners in local restaurants from time to time. And, the hall is just a meeting place where we kind of conduct the business of the lodge, and members attend when they're interested.
We'd like your comments with regard to the upkeep of the building and the renovation of it. What is your flexibility with regard to parking requirements or options that you would practically suggest as ways to address it?
Yeah. We would like to add at least one handicap parking space close to the entrance. We're certainly interested in looking at options for parking. The site does not lend itself to parking within the property itself. I think we certainly could contact some of the commercial folks that are further up the street, see if we can work something out. It's a relatively short walk, and our members could make that walk. We would like to speak with Mr. Diggs a little more, and with Kevin about using that Woodbridge Lane as an option when weather permits and when they feel it's appropriate. I think that's, I don't know of any other options that we might have, but we certainly would like to explore all options.
Woodbridge Lane is how close?
It's
It's,
It's an easement right next door.
Okay, all right, I see it. I hadn't noticed it before. And what's the distance up to the commercial establishments?
It's probably
Few blocks.
approximately a 60-second walk. Where we park at now behind Calvary Methodist Church is about a 30-second walk. So we're talking going from 30 seconds to 60 seconds to take a walk. Certainly nothing that's outrageous. You know, we haven't gone as far as talking about, could we use a buddy system to pick each other up and ride in unison, things like that. We've talked about that some. We want to get over the major humps first, but that's something we could explore, you know, to keep parking down as well. You know, our thing is we'd like to do whatever we can to get there.
Well, it's a potential code issue, but it's also a neighbor issue.
Use the Woodbridge Lane you guys proposing just parking on the grass or something like a real legit parking pad?
given our limited use, it would be parking on the grass. You're looking at parking a few vehicles, one day a week.
Okay, any other comments?
I just
Quickly?
like to say that my understanding of non-conforming uses is that the whole point of the non-conforming use is you cannot comply with the code requirements. I mean, if you could comply with the code requirements, you'd be in another category. And zoning created the non-conforming use because non-conforming uses, by definition, do not conform to the zoning regulation or the code. They don't conform. That's the whole requirement. So then zoning then said, now how do we deal with these things? Because we know we're going to have them, and then you have in your ordinance a whole system that says, here's how we deal with non-conforming uses. We look at whether or not you can substitute a non-conforming use, and then we look at these other factors. I'm not saying it's not correct and proper to be looking at things like parking and traffic, but what I'm saying is that the code, the whole point of the non-conforming use is you don't conform or comply with the code requirement. You don't meet the setbacks, you don't meet the parking, you don't meet the lot width, you don't meet the bulk regulation, I mean, this site probably doesn't meet hardly anything. So I just want to make sure that was.
So I know you guys want to wrap this up, but we want to get into a code debate. I mean, this building's been vacant for close to a year, and I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but just from my interpretation of it, a discontinued non-conforming use shall not be reestablished after 1 year. Non-conforming use shall be established or reestablished after having been discontinued for 1 year. Vacating of premises or building of non-operative status shall be evidence of a discontinued use. So I would make an
You're correct.
argument that no matter what went in there, we would be having this debate whether it's a new church or if it's not.
It falls under the same guidelines that we provide to everybody else once a zoning lapses, is that they have to come back and apply for a new zoning.
So I mean, it's not just it's a Masonic
The only exception in that instance would be, and there would probably be some stipulations, is if a church is going back in there, because churches are special exceptions under all zonings, but only a church.
which I'm not sure.
I need clarification on that.
Any other
We don't
comments?
have any additional
Nope.
comments at this time.
I need clarification from staff on what was just discussed. It's an expired non-conforming use?
It is not. It has not lapsed.
Okay.
And when it lapsed, I mean,
And what's the,
They have been, it has been, as reflected in the staff report, the church has been renting out the space to maintain its operating status.
But it's a church.
I haven't seen anyone there.
It's
Okay.
zoned as a church.
Currently, the church?
It is currently operating
An operating
as a
church.
church use.
Yes, so it's still a church,
It's still a church.
but if they're gonna change the
Is it
use,
technically
Well, that's the
vacated, though?
essential
I mean,
non-conforming
I
use.
pay attention to what goes on around there. I haven't seen anyone there once.
That would have to be your testimony. The testimony given to us is that it's maintaining its operating status by renting out the
Okay, so I'd
facility.
like to go on record and say that I haven't seen anyone there close to a year.
okay.
Close to a year, or?
No.
Okay.
If I can add, that
Call for
would-
discussion.
we were aware of the importance of continuing the use of the building as a church, and so we've had kind of irregular meetings, but at least probably twice monthly meetings ever since we put the property under contract. That were where some of the members of the lodge gathered on Sunday. We had a prayer and conducted a service. And I would point out also that the church continues to be owned by the Methodist Council, as it always has. All the pews are in place, all the Bibles are in the church. Anyone that went inside can certainly recognize it to be a church.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Discussion?
So I guess I'm going to just fire on all the three things that I ended up writing down.
Okay.
So the three things I wrote down out of the discussion from the audience, the first of which is the parking. Knowing that 25 members can come in and falling under the definition for fraternal lodges of being, as Scott quoted, 112-7 for off-street parking, that they have to have one space per 3-person capacity. You're dealing with 8 spaces minimum, of which I think the proposal of parking on the road, while it may allow them to do that, is a greater exception than necessary. Now, I don't know if there's a possibility of actually doing something to the property in which they can park on their own property space if there's access from that road. But I think that is a big concern that impacts all the residents and anybody else, because if they have more than 25 ever show up, they have 75 members, you're talking, at least 25 cars. And if they have the maximum capacity of the church, which is 95, you're going to have 31 cars. So that was the first. The second one.
So are you basically agreeing with the staff recommendation in that regard?
I'm making my points first, and then. So the second one was the code compliance. I think there's a few things that need to be fixed with the property. Specifically, I mean, it's already been mentioned, getting things up to standards, fixing, anything that's deteriorated or a safety hazard. I'm sure the residents or the owner will do that. I think some special focus needs to be coming out of us with regards to what types of changes there are, and if we want to end up putting any type of specifications for what needs to be changed versus what is just nice to have. The last thing was a comment that was made about churches versus fraternities. They are two different things. A church is a church, and fraternities are a group of members that are meeting for a certain reason. Yes, I understand churches are groups of members that are meeting for religious purposes, but they are clearly defined as two different entities belonging to both. They are two different things. Churches have special exceptions, fraternity lodges don't. So I want to make that perfectly clear. They are outlined differently within the code. Lastly, I don't want to see buildings personally sitting derelict, especially for long periods of time. I would like to support the use of this building, but my concerns and hesitations are the fact of the parking primarily and the impacts to the residents. We've had similar issues with trying to put things into different areas in residential neighborhoods, people wanting to come in and continue using them. If the parking can be mitigated to the extent that it's not just parking on the grass in any free spaces, then I personally don't see an issue with doing this, as long as we conform with keeping the historical charm of the building, as the residents have indicated. That's my statement.
Anyone else?
Just so I'm clear, is this church being sold, or are they still gonna rent it out to the Masons?
You're selling it.
They're
The purchasing.
the Prudence Lodge is the contract purchaser at this time.
Okay.
Am I correct, Mr. Paul?
And I guess that touches on the one point which I'll let you.
Yeah, I just want to second Scott's comment regarding the parking issue. I think it is a very important issue. We've heard a lot of discussion from the neighbors in this community about traffic issues, the safety of that road, the amount of traffic on the road, the speed on the road, and adding to that problem additional on-street parking where there's very limited space is going to be a serious problem. And I'm not saying that I don't think there's a solution, but I think that in my personal opinion, any recommendation to allow this special exception non-conforming use to occur would have to include a requirement that adequate off-site parking be provided.
I'm going to also voice my support of those two opinions as well. I think meeting once a week sounds innocent enough, but I think for the neighbors around, once a week, potentially 20 some odd cars that Scott mentioned, after a while could be like,
Or neighbors move and then the building's still there.
Right. So, our thoughts, I think, are we want this to happen. However, the neighborhood impact is also an equal part of the equation that we need to consider. And I think parking is a part of that ingredient that we cannot ignore.
And I think, one thing I did touch on briefly was the code compliance, but, again, Scott, you indicated it. I think we need to be fair to every single person coming forward, that they're all treated the same. And as such, because this is a new use coming through, it does need to go through the same wickets that every other property has to come through with regards to zoning compliance and meeting code and everything else. So I don't think it's just a one-for-one that you can move in. Thoughts?
Patty, comments?
I do agree. I like the concept very, very, very well. I would recommend that you talk to commercial, parking lot availability, talk to the people that actually might be able to help you in this regard. What I do really like, and I think it's very important for the town, is that we do preserve historic properties. And you sound like you're very good folks, and that you'll be looking out for the best interest of their property. And so I would greatly encourage you to come back and hopefully have some type of a presentation whereby we can be, the parking will be mitigated, our concerns for it, and I think then, the neighbors will be welcoming. And I think that's very important for both sides. But please don't be discouraged by what we're saying here tonight. We really do want to encourage you to continue your mission, and we hope very much that we can all be there at the ceremony to welcome the new fraternity house.
Okay. Would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
Oh.
In other
Your
words,
first time sitting in the chair, go ahead.
This is baptism by fire, by the way, because this is my first meeting.
no time like the present, Patty.
So, I know. So I would like to put into motion that we, how do we want to word this? That we will review.
Well, it could be even a conditional recommendation.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Can we do yeah.
You can read the staff through.
Just take a look at the staff, the way their recommendation is framed, and I think they get close to it. If the parking is the primary issue of concern, then that can be the condition. It could be a recommendation.
Does that work, Patty, the way it's written?
Yeah. Why don't we, I recommend that we approve the request with a special exception.
Well, it could be, we could send forward a favorable recommendation of approval for the request for special exception pending.
And that's kind of what the staff recommendation, if you just want to use that as your recommendation, I think it kind of sums it up nicely for us.
It works.
Condition required off-street address to be reviewed by us. That works, just use that as your recommendation, as your motion.
Okay.
We have to say it.
I have to say it formally.
You can read it.
You can read it.
I can do this.
You can read it. You
I
can do it.
this.
You're halfway through it.
Come on, I know better.
Okay, I recommend that the Planning Commission forward a favorable recommendation to approve the special exception request to substitute the existing non-conforming use of this property from a church to a fellowship hall for a Masonic lodge to the Board of Appeals with the condition that the required off-street parking is addressed in a site plan to be reviewed and approved by this Planning Commission.
I'll second it.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Okay. Good. Thank you all for your contributions. Very productive discussion. Well, we have, before everyone leaves who was here for this, we have the leader of the appeals board here. Would you like to share with them how the process goes forward from here?
Sure. Yes, this is Roxanne, so please, she's a word of wisdom for everybody.
My address to mail the money to is 60, no. My name is Roxanne Hemphill. I'm the chairperson for the Board of Appeals. The Planning Commission has recommended, given us a favorable recommendation to give this building a special exception. What the Board of Appeals is the hearing portion of the planning and zoning. So when you go to the Board of Appeals, you're actually in a hearing. You testify. We're only doing, yes, this meets the criteria that has been given to us and the testimony that we have. Yes, they can get the special exception. No, they cannot, with the conditions or not conditions that have been given by the Planning Commission. It then goes back to the Planning Commission because you have to have site approval, different things that need to go on within the Planning Commission. We're not saying, yes, it's okay to do what you want to do. We're just saying you have the special exception to go to the next step. And by the way, my grandfather was a Mason and a past Grand Mason, and my mother and my grandmother were also members of the Prudence chapter of the Eastern Star. So I hope that this goes well for you, because I remember as a little girl going up those steps.
Okay.
Thank you, Roxanne.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Roxanne.
Okay, so do we want to blow through the
All right.
sign permits?
So let's see.
Yeah, start with site.
Regrouping. We're going back to sign permits?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
would we be able to take up the next agenda item? Miss Phyllis is here, and I didn't know.
Ordinance
Like
2013-17.
the ordinance.
2013-17.
Do you want to do that one?
Yeah.
All right, let's do that real quick, because that's probably the one everybody cares about.
Okay. We can do that.
All right.
Don't you care about everything?
I do, but that one's really on the top of my list because I want your guys' input.
Are you pushing the signs
No,
next?
next is signs. But 2013-17, which is an ordinance that, I guess I'll,
Yeah, do you want to go ahead?
do we want
Do you
to
want to do
clear
that
it
one,
out?
Scott?
Or?
Yeah, let's,
Go ahead and just continue.
Okay.
We'll never get any.
All right, so
let's, moving along,
I can talk a lot.
we're going to take up ordinance
2013-17.
213-17, proposed amendment to 11224 to allow commercial sign business as a special exception use in the RE district residential existing district. Referral from town council.
Yep. So I was asked by council to bring this to planning so that you guys could end up having a chance to review this ordinance. This is specifically for 1010 Main Street as written. Councilman Blaze ended up bringing it forward, and I told him that you guys would look at it and be able to provide the feedback necessary within the 60-day time period, which that is today, so that we can have a decision either way of a favorable approval or disapproval. The ordinance, I'm sure you guys have all taken the chance to read it. Calls out 1010, says that they want it explicitly for residential exception, outlines briefly maintaining the attractive present living environment of existing low-density residential neighborhood to keep these areas free from land usage. What else? And one of the things that I thought was interesting, well, I won't discuss it first, I'll let you guys discuss it and I'll weigh my inputs. So I'm bringing this forward, so I'd like to hear your comments and inputs, and hopefully this body will come to a decision.
So just so we're on the track here, this ordinance is specific to one property.
This ordinance as written is one property only. It is not for a general group of properties.
Well, then,
And
I
I questioned that to
I don't
the
think that's what
councilman, if he was writing it for one property, and he said yes.
But the modification is not just for one property. The modification
Understand?
allows commercial sign business to be in a special exception, regardless of what property it is.
Understand, but he
Okay.
wrote, the way it is written, it says explicitly it's for 1010, but yes, it does reach to broader properties.
I have a
And
question.
that's a potential concern.
Well,
That's not
I have a
allowed.
question, which is with regard to the last, well, it's not the last, it's the last whereas on page 1, where it states that the owner's improvements to the property are essentially commercial and have returned the building to an attractive and pleasant living environment for the neighborhood, based on,
I did not
A
have
whereas
any
is a
formation of
fact,
this,
right?
so I can only speculate. I saw Councilman Blaze here earlier, but I don't think he said it.
okay, but a whereas is a fact, a matter of fact? Is that not correct? I'm not a lawyer.
so yeah, the building is a living environment now?
No, well,
Is that
it's
what you-
returned to
Mr.
an attractive and pleasant living environment for the neighborhood. And I think that's subject to opinion, and I'm not, so I have a
I
concern
think
that
it would
it's,
be subject to opinion.
so I have a concern that it's in there as a factual statement. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but
I had a question, because I don't know the answer to it. Whereas the town council has determined that the property has always been operated for a commercial purpose. Is it always been operated commercially?
There has been no residential use on this property since
Since it was constructed?
Since it was, yes, I cannot think of the word, constructed.
The only
In operation.
The only exact wording, every single business, or every single thing that has occupied this property has been commercial. To answer your question specifically, has it always been run as a commercial? The answer is no, because it ended up going into foreclosure, and at that time it lapsed. So there was a period where nothing was running in it.
But the rest of the property that's grown up around it and has been developed as residential?
All surrounding property is residential.
my only other comment would be, I think it would be helpful to have a definition of commercial sign business. And maybe it's too general, I mean, maybe it's obvious, but what I was thinking is, when I read this, I thought, okay, what is a commercial sign business? What's going to be there? What kind of, what's it going to look like when they're operating a commercial sign business? Does that mean they're going to be manufacturing signs? Does it mean they're going to be manufacturing the product that they put into the sign?
They could manufacture any of that.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Because you're using a limited term, but the fact that the term has not been defined in here does make it very hard, because you're only going off the words that are on this paper. And that's really all this body can look at, is the words on this paper. You can't really speculate and stretch.
And I did go back to the zoning ordinance, and some uses are defined and some aren't, so it could be that we could add a definition to this ordinance. That would be one of my recommendations. If it
Do you want
goes
to make that
forward.
recommendation that you want to put wording to this ordinance?
I said if it goes forward.
The mayor did, Chairman Butts, I didn't know, the mayor did want a photo to be
Do you have it available?
displayed, I think, and he had requested that, and that is the photo of the most
That's not
awesome
it.
planning commission
That's not it.
on the face of the earth.
And Heather was
he
dead
wanted
center.
to say thank you. for
Yes,
that.
this was the photo that I saw.
Yeah, well, that's what came to mind when I was
This was his
thinking of the
example of a
definition.
commercial
Because
sign
it's
business.
an existing business in the town.
And it's a commercial sign business. Hold on, Mr. Malco. We're not talking about your business. We're just talking about the way the ordinance is written.
I came into it because of this, I came here because of that sign.
We're gonna get to that
I
too.
don't know if this is gonna be here.
It's,
I hear this first time today.
the point was, this is, a commercial sign establishment without any specific criteria to limit its impact on the surrounding neighborhoods. So I believe that's why the mayor wanted this.
No, and I think this is an example of, now that's not to say this is the defining example of every, to
or
be
the
fair
only.
to every single sign business, they don't all look like this.
Right.
But this is one possibility. This is a very loose loosely defined,
It's not even defined.
narrow focused ordinance, in my opinion. Bordering on the grounds of being reckless, because it calls out a specific property. It isn't applicable to the town as a whole, like the other three instances that came before.
Okay. All right, the chair would entertain a motion if you are, anyone is so disposed.
I'll let you
Do we have to have a
decide
motion? I mean,
No,
it just
we
says
don't.
discussion.
Well, so the motion, well.
But if we
So
don't,
the big picture is that
if you don't
the
send it
the
back.
intent is to add commercial
okay.
sign business.
Now he's raising his hand.
The intent of this is to add commercial sign business as a special exception in the RE.
The intent of this ordinance as written, when you look at the words, says for 1010 South Main Street.
Well, I'm looking at the actual, where it says on the page
Look
2
on
of
the-
3.
Right, but look at 1 of 3.
Well, I know the whereas is, I understand
Where are
that
you doing
part.
2 of 3?
Where it's got,
Yeah.
where therefore be ordained by the council.
Correct. They just
Residential
want to
exempted,
add commercial
rating
business,
C,
sign business.
Special exceptions, 13, item 13B. So they want to add commercial sign business to the special exception for residential.
Yes.
That's the big picture.
Yeah.
Yes.
How
The
it's
other-
written is very poor, I agree.
The other thing I did is I looked at what the other, and I don't have a copy, and I don't know if you do, but I looked at the other special exception uses in an RE. Commercial, if I recall off the top of my head, the commercial businesses were more in terms of office space. I don't think there was any commercial, like retail or manufacturing or whatever,
Manufacturing, yeah.
assembly type uses in that grouping. Do you happen to have it, or are you looking?
Yeah,
Not finding it fast enough?
well, these Post-it notes I
We
have in my
can
book
Google
are
that real quick. I
are
can't
free.
put it on my phone.
Okay.
We've had,
And so my point is, I was trying to compare it to see if it, stood out as blatantly not in conformance with the rest of the list that's out there, and also to think that,
Special exceptions in RE.
I
yeah,
have.
and also to remind ourselves that if this was passed, that this type of business could go anywhere in at any property in an RE as a special
what I was
exception, as
alluding
long
to
as it
as-
was
that's
approved.
the open-endedness of it.
Yeah.
The special exception uses are home occupations, nursery schools, child care centers, professional offices, a public utility building, family apartments, veterinary clinics, churches, schools, libraries, and community centers, fire and rescue stations, elderly housing, detached and attached units, private park and recreation facilities, accessory apartments, and non-resident professional offices. And what I'd like to add, though, is that all of those, except for private park and recreation facilities, basically have specific criteria as to the manner in which they can operate.
In the zoning ordinance generally, or under the RE?
RE, and that's special exceptions, and the uses permitted by right are limited to detached dwellings, public parks and playgrounds, and accessory uses or structures.
So when you were talking about all those other ones having special criteria, where is that defined?
That is defined in Town Code 111262, which is the section of the Town Code that lists the special exception, and then it defines specific criteria that
And
needs
it
to be
says it
met.
has to have certain setbacks
Okay.
and distance
Right.
and
Okay.
yada yada.
Okay.
So, I mean, yes, Tony, you are correct. The overall thing is they want to add the one line, which that one line carries a lot of weight with it. Essentially, you could put a sign business on your property, she could put one on hers, I could put one on mine, anybody could put one on theirs.
And that's a spot zoning is what it comes
It
down
is
to.
spot
That's right.
zoning.
Mm-mm.
It would be if any RE
It
could
does
come
not
forward.
change the zone. I'm
Well,
sorry.
I mean,
We're not, we
because
can't,
it's-
we're not
You're
calling it
right.
spot
Let me
zoning.
reiterate, it gives it the flavor of a spot zone.
It may assimilate to, yes.
But yes, it is a spot something.
So is the intent that there's something that wants to go there at this point?
What's
Is
there
that
now?
right?
Yes.
It's that they are trying, the intent of this ordinance is to assist individuals with trying to put a working business into a residential area.
It's to reestablish a lapsed special exception.
Well, that's the specific, but the wording, if you follow just to the wording of RE, they're trying to put a commercial sign business into a residential existing property.
You had two, I think, it was
Okay, but just
Yes.
bear with me since it's my first time back in a while. The RE zoning that is on that piece of property now,
Yes, it is.
all the years that Dennis Bath and Kitchens was there,
No.
from the beginning of time,
No.
what was there
What
before?
happened was, the very first use, in 1936, the 39, the building was built, there was no zoning. Zoning first, the first zoning was in 1951 or 1956, and that was, they changed it to a residential zoning. At that point, it actually became non-conforming. But a commercial use just continued and carried on.
And so they got the special
So they
exception.
got a special exception to continue
The
to
very
reside in a
first special
residential zone.
exception for a substitution of a non-conforming use that I can find was back in 1976. And they've just been getting substitutions of non-conforming use.
Okay, so it
if-
lapsed because it went into foreclosure.
Absolutely.
And so now we're in sort of a situation where,
It reverted back to residential.
yeah, you
and now
revert
we
back to
have-
a residential.
Current owner
Right.
bought it,
And it's a
wants
very
to
unique
establish a commercial
property.
business there again.
Okay, so it's been purchased,
Yes.
It was purchased, yes.
and who purchased it?
Mr. Franco Melka, he's in
Gentleman.
the back.
Hi, Frank. Mr. Maka.
And there have been several efforts to try to figure out the best way to find a use for this property because it does have some challenges for it to perhaps revert to residential. So this is another attempt.
Just to be clear to Elaine, it's the fourth.
Mr. Omelka, did you want to say something briefly?
My name is Frank Malka. I'm on 10th South Main Street. I didn't came here tonight because of this. I just hear this yesterday or tonight. You know, that means I'm not here from this. I'm here from three signs, not for my sign, two other signs. Okay, but what I want to clear because I don't like it. Some of the I don't agree with some of the comments of Yuska, like you saying this property was never all the time the commercial. It was. You say is lose the how we call non-conforming use or special exception, and you say it's coming residential, right? Nobody was really living there. Did anybody live there ever?
No,
Inside.
it reverts automatically back, so that's
I know,
fact.
but somebody asked here if the building was ever residential. Never been.
No.
When they lose.
They asked, did anything other than a business reside on that property? And being factual, yes. There was a period of conformance where there was no business. There was nothing. It was a void. It was a
This
foreclosure.
building was commercial from 1939. Last meeting also you have the comments like why sign company? There was never been sign company. If you look backward, there was Atlantic Display sign company. I bought the company. That's mean those comments where you always put it in, that's not truthful. And I'm not agreed with you with anything because you always saying something what doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe you two guys, yes, but not to me. Second thing, I don't know who did this ordinance or whatever it is today. I don't know who did it,
Councilman Blaze actually drafted this himself.
Okay. I don't know why somebody say commercial sign company. I'm not commercial sign company. I'm family-owned sign company. I'm not. I don't know what it means.
Well, it's your own business.
I just don't understand.
It's a commercial venture, isn't it? It is a business, right? It's a commercial.
It is a business.
Okay, that's not.
But
I think what Mr. Amalka is
I just want to
saying
say
commercial
the
is like corporate or a.
yes, I want to say the DMS, right? When you show the picture of the DMS, that has nothing to do with me and never is going to be have nothing to do with me. I have this sign company, my business from 16 years ago when I emigrated to the United States from Czechoslovakia. I have the business from this time. I never have more than 2 trucks in the use, and I never will be. Because what I have from the stress, from the business, from everything, I have eczema. And I don't need to grow the eczema on my body. I have 90%, I know it's not your problem.
No.
I'm just saying why I don't want to be like DMS, and I never will. And I don't want it.
I understand what you're saying, but to be clear, just so you understand the same language, okay?
I understand the language.
If we end up putting a commercial label on your business, I know you're not thinking big commercial, but you're selling to the public, that is a commercial business.
Scotty.
Please let me finish. If you do commercial, what happens is, not your business, if we put the label of commercial, that means anybody can come in and do that.
Okay. But what you guys say here, and almost like a laugh, that's how I feel it. Like you say, I can open a sign company, I can open my house sign company. That's not about this is not about your house. You know, he wrote it very bad, I tell you. I never asked him to write it. I tell you seriously, I can say anybody else. I don't know why he did it. I tell you. I just, you know what I just did with the 1010 South Street? I just did like this with the paper. I don't care anymore. Okay, you don't want to deal with it. You don't want to have nice property. It's going to grow weeds. It's going to grow the front yard. I'm going to send you the picture to you, Heather, on your email, how it looks when I bought this crap. 10 yards of containers outside with the people, not you guys, but with any people, just drop it of anything what they want. A lot of bottles of alcohol, young people, 15, 13, 12, whatever, just go there, drink, smoke, and using drugs. I show you how many pictures I have with the drugs using in this property. Okay, you want to have it? I can tear it down the fence, what Miss Fellas doesn't like it. I tear it down the gate, what she doesn't have the code and she want to have the code, I can give her the code. Your what is his name? For the work for town, I give him the code for the gate. Yeah, I give them the code. I don't know why Mrs. Fellas is supposed to have the code on my gate. I don't understand it, you know. But I say, all my neighbors, okay. Instead of Miss has the code from the gate. All of them are my friends. All of them signed the petition. All of them. I never have any bad neighbors. Never ever in this property. Only you guys try to do something. I don't understand what you try to do. None of those neighbors, not even Mrs. Fellas, doesn't want to see daycare. Because daycare, you're going to have 60, 70, 80 cars a day. There's no question. Nobody want to see doctor because you're going to have another 50, 60, 70 cars. No, none of those neighbors doesn't want this. So what do you want to put there? If you put there the sign company like this, my sign company, I taking care, I think I showed you in past 2 years, I taking care about this property very well. And my sign company is going to have 3, 4 cars, 2, 3 employees. That's it. That's what it's going to have. I think that's the best for the neighbors. And if you guys think, or the neighbor think is not, I'm sorry, I cannot say anything else. But I say, I didn't came here because of this today. I came here really because of the sign. No, because I was waiting, I tell you, seriously, I was waiting when the sign is going to be done, and then I leave. Because I really don't care. I don't want to hear from Mrs. Fellas anymore who I am. I know who I am. I'm the working man. I work 7 days a week, 12 to 16 hours a day. Who did this? Tell me. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, yes.
Can we just talk about ordinance?
My name is Phyllis Reed. As you know, I live right behind Dennis Kitchen and Bath at the said property, and I've been before you many times, and I think we've discussed this same issue many times. It was denied. I'd like to remind you, I have your recommendation from April of 2012, and I just wanted to point out a few quotes from your decision. It says, the goals of the master plan have expressed a desire to protect the integrity and harmony of existing residential settlements in the community. The conflicts between the commercial usage of the building and the surrounding residents have grown significantly. Traffic generation, noise, and normal commercial activities have negatively affected the homes around the property. Any commercial business activity would be disruptive to the community. And it's in the staff's opinion that the residential manner of the surrounding neighborhoods is so solidified, any intrusion of any type of commercial activity would be a negative impact. And I think that still holds true today. I don't want to see a commercial property in there because I have seen the effects of what a commercial property can do, and I'm still living with that. And as I stated, I believe at the last meeting, I would like to see the problems with the past commercial properties fixed before you give anybody else permission to come in and further destroy the property. And we're talking soil contamination, we're talking asbestos, and water, stormwater drainage is a constant problem on my property. The fence is beautiful. The fence is beautiful. Mr. Omelka.
No.
We have discussed this, we're just talking with the ordinance.
Right. And I also want to clarify something. I was told by Mr. King that the difference between industrial and commercial, I asked what the difference was, and he told me that the difference was with industrial, you're permitted to keep outside vehicles, outside storage, that type of thing. Is that correct?
I would look to town staff for an answer.
In the industrial zoning, it does not prohibit the use of outdoor storage. In community commercial zoning, it would prohibit.
Then I suggest to you that this property is now being used for industrial. There's outside storage, there's trailers, there's vehicles, construction vehicles. It's there now, and there's not supposed to be any business going on. But we all see with our very own eyes that there is commercial business being done on a daily basis. And it has been for quite some time. You may not all see it, but it is being done. And I believe it's industrial at this point.
Okay.
And so I'm asking for you to uphold your recommendation previously. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
And Mrs. Reed, to clarify, was that in response to Mr. Omelka's text amendment for which he?
Yes,
Okay,
April
for the
20th, 2012.
Okay, and that was to modify or to allow in the RE zone a special exception for a family sign business?
I believe so. Limited advertising, signage, business
Okay.
services.
I just wanted to clarify for the
All
record
right.
which comments
I
you're
just want to say
speaking
last
about.
comment. Industrial mean 100 trucks and more. That's industrial. That's first thing. And second thing, I think I still own the property. I didn't sell it. And I have there my truck. I have there my trailers. Like anybody who has the house here, you can see the truck with the plumber. You can see the truck with the sign or whatever. You can see anybody else has the truck next to the car or the trailer. I don't think so I do anything illegal. I think I can have my truck there, and I use this building for storage my stuff. Yes, I do. I don't think so I do anything illegal.
Both speakers point to the issue that I brought up, which is commercial sign business is not defined well. Whether it's industrial, commercial, family-owned, those are the types of questions that I still think we need to resolve in order to move forward with any type of ordinance. And along with what Heather said, which would be site design criteria or certain criteria that would be associated with whatever we're going to call this if we do so in the future.
If I may add, a recommendation is needed to be forwarded to the town
Exactly.
council at this time. Failure to do so at the end of the 60-day
Is
period,
acceptance.
which we're near, it does constitute a favorable recommendation.
And that's
So
why
I
I
just
was on
wanted
the
to
agenda.
Okay.
let the
Thank
commission
you
know
for the
that.
reminder.
Well, Chair would accept a motion to your preference. If you find the current ordinance unacceptable and you're not willing to accept it, then please phrase your motion that way.
Can you, Heather, can you explain again what type of motion are we? You said approval,
You
but
have to either approve or disapprove at this meeting. Failure to do either results in an automatic approval going to council at the next council meeting.
So it would be
It's a favorable.
It's a recommendation.
Or a recommendation to
forward?
approve or a recommendation to deny. That's what.
This ordinance.
Or
as
if
worded.
this body doesn't wish to make a recommendation, they could.
But
Which is tantamount to acceptance.
Yes.
are we accepting or denying the ordinance? Or are we just making a recommendation
Either
to?
accepting or denying this ordinance as written,
Yes,
because
specific.
council has this on the agenda for the next meeting to vote on.
Each proposed ordinance stands on its own, right, as is.
Unfortunately, it's not this commission's job to change the ordinance as presented in front of you, whatever ordinance it is.
Okay, so I make a motion to deny or not accept the ordinance as written.
Is there a second?
Does the council want to hear a recommendation, a word recommendation, or? What is
That's
the
what I'm
council?
trying
It's
to
the
ask.
commission's recommendation
Okay.
to approve or deny this ordinance that is
Okay.
being
So
presented.
Leslie,
for
so
you.
you're
Can I
making a
modify?
You can make a motion to
yeah.
deny the ordinance.
I make a motion to recommend denial of the ordinance as written.
And I'll second it.
Is that,
Okay.
I'm still.
Motion has been made and seconded to deny the ordinance as written. Okay, all in favor, let me know by
Yes.
saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Okay,
So
motion passes.
we'll have staff present that?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Heather,
It's not
Yes.
staff
clear.
on
It's very
given
difficult.
the recommendation this time.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure it wasn't anything I had to do.
No, we will,
Next.
All right.
okay.
All right. Let's
Signs.
see, do we have any other folks here?
Well, you have the signs, and
Signs.
Do the
is
center
there
street.
Four
ones
signs.
that Mr. Nick would want to first?
You
Since
want
he
to
has
finish?
I don't
multiple.
know.
You want to finish the new business stuff over?
What?
Well,
New business or signs? Which ones? Because the sign orders are huge.
Wait a minute, Ann, I'm sorry, you're trying to.
I didn't know if the gentleman was from Pet Value.
Yes.
He is here.
Well, he is from New Jersey.
He has.
So-
All right.
So we may
Yeah,
want
it's
to,
been
we
very
may want to
New
do the
Jersey.
sign approvals.
You're all the way from New Jersey?
I am.
Let him go.
I've
Let's
enjoyed almost every minute of it.
You are so good.
Could we get to signs,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, and do
Yes.
Pet Value
All right,
first?
please.
we certainly
Yes.
can.
Because the order of my packet doesn't matter now.
Let's do Pet Value first.
Get him off.
So
So
what
do
do
you
you
have to
have
go back home tonight?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, he is going.
He's getting excited.
All right, I'm gonna talk just briefly. You can stay up there, because you'll be fine. Do you have to drive back home tonight?
Yes.
Oh,
Oh my
heavens.
gosh.
But I'm not
So let's
afraid.
hurry up.
You don't look afraid. Okay, that's good. Okay, Annalise is gonna get us set up here. The applicant is Pet Value, and they are coming to the Mount Airy Shopping Center at 417 East Ridgeville Boulevard in Suite 18A.
Now, this is next door to Mount Airy Liquors?
It is, it is.
Okay.
It is sandwiched between the carpet
Okay.
store and Mount Airy
Okay.
Liquors. Zoning is community commercial, and it will be a retail store. They've submitted a sign permit application, and they propose to install wall-mounted channel lettering for their new location, as Annalise has up there for us. The sign measures 2 foot 9 inches by 14 feet wide for a total of 38.5 square feet. And they do have a tenant frontage of 38.7 linear feet. As Chairman Butts did state, the store has been divided and is occupying the former Fashion Bug tenant space, and the easternmost portion is occupied by Mount Airy Liquors. We do recommend approval of the sign permit application at this time.
I'll second.
I'm not allowed to make motions, but
I
thank
don't
you.
need to testify.
Do you,
Absolutely.
would you like to say
I would
longer?
just like to, that my stepdaughter is very excited that this is coming to town,
Oh,
because she's
good.
just a
We
pet
love
now.
critters too. We're friends and friends. Love the mission so much.
I would like to, but we'll let the
But
applicant speak if they'd like to.
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend the approval of the sign permit application with the design and building material as proposed.
I'll second.
Is there a sign, a picture that's, oh,
Yeah, I think,
It's in the
Ann,
packet.
it's in the packet,
Oh, I
and
didn't see
Ann,
it.
can you go back?
Right there. You can't really see it in the video
Okay.
too much.
It's hard to see
That's
because
better.
yeah, I like to.
We
the
can,
blue is faint.
we can subdue the lights.
Oh, we got it.
No, I
He's got it.
written all over it for, you
Yeah,
know.
see, now that's
Yeah.
great.
He took good notes.
I just stopped there on the way here to survey it again.
Take it on that. There we go.
All right, motion has been made and seconded to approve the Pet Value sign as proposed. All in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign.
Welcome.
It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome to Mount Airy.
Thank you. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. No, I'm not being a wise guy. I did. And
Out of curiosity, how many pet values are there?
Oh my goodness gracious, I've been in the business 25 years and they're doing, I can only speak to their growth, I'm not sure, but there's a lot. They're out of Canada, but they were purchased, big money came from Atlanta, and they're doing 50 stores a year, and there's hardly any retailers in this economy that are expanding like that.
There was a pet shop there once before.
Was there?
Yeah, that's why it was unusual.
Pet Love. Pet Love.
Yep.
Pet
Yeah.
Love.
Now, what were you selling? Was it,
Local franchise.
could be just like a pet store,
Pet
pet market on a
supplies,
smaller,
yeah,
smaller,
yeah,
something
pet
like
supplies.
that?
I don't think they have critters in there.
They're not gonna do critters.
No.
Just gonna be
No.
supplies.
See, there's a market for saltwater fish.
For what?
Saltwater fish.
I agree.
I love animals and I love their business.
Okay.
And
We're glad they
and
did
I
that.
love your town.
you,
Thank
sir.
you. Where's Annalee?
Right there.
Let's thank you for your gracious assistance and
you.
help.
Thank you. Have a
Safe travels.
Thanks so much.
Annalise is our number one customer service person.
I have a comedian's heart and I made a lot of material.
Oh, no.
Is Mr. Omenka, to be fair,
Yeah,
the
we
only other
should.
one?
Yeah.
Mr. Omenka,
Is there
what
anyone
signs
else
do you
besides
have?
Mr. Omelka who's waiting
What
for one
signs
of
do you
the
have so we can
agenda
hit
items?
those?
Yes, Centrum, Centrom. I call it the vitamin. And he also has
It is
his
a vitamin.
architectural item.
Okay.
Vitamin.
Centrum,
Which
and
ones?
what was the other one?
Yeah,
Real estate?
your Chevrolet.
Huh?
No, that did not, there's no, we'll talk. That wasn't able to go. There's no room for that. Like on the building.
Okay.
So where are you gonna put this on?
So we got two things.
We need to talk about that.
So we need,
But
So where are we on
there's
the
no
sign?
square
So
footage.
we've got
Centron.
Centron is one,
do
and then the
Centron.
other one is the bottom
let's
one.
do Centron.
Okay, Centron.
Okay, as we talked, this is a staff report for Centrom. This is at the.
It's missing a word. And then,
Or Citrom.
Citrom?
I might be saying
is it
it wrong.
C-E-T-R-O-M? Yes? Okay. No
I
N.
like
Spell it wrong
vitamins.
down here.
Citrom, which
Citrom.
is at the Iliano Main Street vitamins.
It's not vitamins.
Is it Centrum or Centrum?
You can do it, Heather.
Oh
There's no
my
N.
heavens.
Citron.
Main Street Iliano Plaza. The zoning is community commercial.
It's all wrong.
They have submitted a sign permit application. The applicant proposes to install channel lettering for this location. It will be internally illuminated by LED lighting, and it is similar to the existing signage on the building. The sign does measure 1 foot 5 inches by 9 feet 5 inches wide for a total of 14.25 square feet. The staff does consider the style of channel lettering and associated coloring acceptable, and it does reflect the company's logo. This tenant space is an internal tenant space, and it does not have the benefit of any building frontage. It is within the average sign size for the overall plaza. So it correlates to the existing signage on the plaza. And this entire building is limited to 200 square feet of square footage as per the code, and a spreadsheet of all the existing signage with the CTROM is on there, and they have enough for this sign. So staff does recommend approval of the sign permit application with the design and material proposed.
Okay, by the way, Heather, this is a fabulous addition
Yeah,
to
this
our
is-
packet for this type of, this type of situation
Okay.
where it's a multi-tenant building.
Okay.
This is so insightful, so helpful, and what you did for Parkview
Took
Medical
the
as
words right out of
well.
my mouth.
Yeah, we keep this to keep ourselves honest. So if this is something you guys want to see, we
Oh,
can
it's awesome.
certainly.
Oh, it's,
Yeah, it definitely helps.
now,
Now,
got pictures would be better.
So you basically started with 200 square feet and you've been counting down. And so
Right.
you just,
And there have been some, ones that have been approved, but then they've been taken away. So
Okay.
we wanted to let you know that they were no longer reflected in there.
Scott?
so, a couple things. One, I like the sign. It's a good logo. The thing that I noticed about the spreadsheet, and I had a discussion with Heather, but I'll just say with everybody, is that the initial questions I had with this were the businesses that were permitted and no longer there, do they still have signs up or have they been removed? Because you have a table down here saying signs that are no longer there. And I guess the purpose of me asking that is if those signs were still there and there's only 14.25
Right.
left, then who replaced all these signs, or why are we talking about them? If they're still there, or the business is still in that space without a sign?
No, let me clarify. The signage existing for Main Street is reflected in the top chart in black font lettering. Our planning commission has very, very good memories. And I know that some people might question, well, what about beer and wine or solar eye care? We wanted to verify for the planning commission that they were permitted, they were once installed, they are no longer on the building. If you remember,
so all those signs are removed?
All these signs are removed.
Okay, so I guess my only point was that seeing those numbers there when I initially was talking to Heather confused me because I saw numbers and I was like, so
that's why we normally kept it as an internal thing, but we can clarify.
But that's fine, and thank you for clarifying it again for me.
My pleasure.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion that the Centrum sign be approved with materials and design as being proposed.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the Centrum application with design and building materials proposed. All in favor? Signal by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign?
And Mr. Amelko, so Centrum is approved, but that only leaves 14.25 square feet for the real estate sign that they wish to put up. 14.25.
14 and a quarter.
So we were not able to consider that.
So
I told you I can remove the real estate. They told me I can remove the gold line. I can remove those stars because they say if they're not gonna get the sign on the building like everybody else, they're gonna, and he's gonna lose the tenant. That's why I have to work with the 14.25%.
Yeah, 14.25 is the only thing you have left, which is why we weren't able
And you don't have
to.
anything like a special exception?
They can,
Mr. Omelka.
Because other like a Frederick County, everybody has, you can go like a special, if they are over 200, you can go.
what you're talking about is the variance process. I think, Mr. Chairman, did you want Mr. Amelko to come up to the podium? Is that what you would be directing him to do?
No, we just wanted to confirm that it's CETROM
I was shocked.
as opposed to CENTROM?
So the only comment I was making to him is that in your drawing diagram, both of them say CENTROM. So we're approving the sign as being designed, but you may want to just change your drawings, your architectural drawings say CENTROM.
Okay, so it's CEC.
It's okay, I'm just saying it's a wording thing for his records.
Yeah. All right. So, Mr. Omelka's second item?
Would be the 10-ton sign?
Your architectural element. We're gonna talk about that, okay? Hold on, let me get to my paper.
Here it is.
You and her take my comments and I'll know what you run there, because I'm eating already. You guys were gonna go do some research.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, she's not here. We assigned it to our on-commission historian, Lindy.
The legality? That's what I'm
Okay.
talking about, right?
Because she's a member of the historical commission.
But that's not the.
All right. Is anybody ready for me?
Yes.
Okay. The applicant for this project is Frank Omelka, and he has proposed an architectural sign element proposal. And as you can see, his building at 1010 South Main Street has a long-standing Chevrolet identifier within the brick, and he wishes to freshen this building marker. He wishes to paint the background of a building marker using an antique white or almost a beige paint material, and paint with inside of the wording for Chevrolet to make it a little bit more clean and to stand out. And he also proposes the addition of the since 1939. Staff met, and we do support his efforts to freshen this architectural element. We like, what it does to the building, and we're putting it in front of the Planning Commission for your approval.
Okay. I don't know that if anyone else, I don't think they're aware, because we didn't have time to share it with them.
I sent it to everybody.
Did you send it to everyone?
Everybody got the
Did everyone
same
get it? Okay. Then,
Except Patty. So we may want to share with her because he was a new addition.
so
I apologize.
let's share with Patty, and then let's
So-
talk about that if we think it's germane and pertinent.
Okay. And Mr. Manka, I want you to know this too, because I appreciate you wanting to do this and actually supported you freshening your building. I had some initial concerns with the building itself, so I actually reached out to Chevrolet to check because their logo is being used on a building that is not a dealership. Their concern from that aspect was that their legal department wants to know how that logo is being used since it's not on an active dealership, because it's their brand that's being represented. So I have their contact information, so to benefit you, you may want to reach out to them just to see what you can and can't do with that. So that was first and foremost, because I want to make sure that you didn't know, I didn't know. So that was the first thing. The only other comment I had about this, and it's a general comment, is that the Chevrolet logo, if they let you use it and everything is fine. The concern that I had, and they may have as well, is that adding the text since 1939 is that the building hasn't been historically a Chevrolet building since 1939, and I think putting the text on there to imply that it's been a Chevy dealership since then is misleading. So if this is approved and there's no issues with doing it.
Can I build 1939?
Do we get into the business here of dictating what is put on a sign? I think that's a bigger question.
No, we don't go into the business of that. I think I will just dictate, you may want to find out from them what you can and can't do.
I'm not aware of it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
I guess he doesn't want to go
What does that
forward.
mean?
It might change, it also might alter the historical value. By doing that, that might alter the historical value.
Well,
That's actually a good point.
That's a concern for
The
sure.
thing with doing it, if I can comment, is that
Yeah.
when I ended up talking to their legal department, and this is public disclosure, modifying Chevrolet's brand in any way, shape, or form has to be approved by Chevrolet. And the fact that they're putting a date into the logo, which is a copyrighted thing, it's not up to the town. That's up for the owner or any business person or somebody that if they want to use that image, they need to work that out with Chevrolet. That's not
General
us.
Motors could chase after him
Yeah.
if they wanted to?
I'm not saying they could or couldn't. Their legal department would like to talk to him if he's going to use that logo.
I think we just stay out of it until he gets
Well,
out.
I mean,
Well, is that,
there are some companies that are incredibly protective.
but is that something that we should be
No.
concerned about at the moment?
The only thing we're concerned about right now is the refreshing of the building. My concern is putting the date since 1939 in, which is what's being presented. And my comment still stands that this building has not been a Chevrolet dealership since 1939, and therefore I can't support this as it stands in front of me.
That's a legitimate question that Scott has. My first concern, and it wasn't because, I love the logo. I think it's fabulous. I wondered if there was a concern at all with regard to our historical commission in terms of what action he was proposing to take with it. Not because I wanted to curtail what he was proposing or wanted to do, but just in terms of the historical significance, was that a potential concern?
But, the big picture here is that is a privately owned building.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's up to this town to say, he could put up, since 1834, it doesn't matter what he puts on there. Even this historical, we can really say nothing. It's a privately owned structure.
That's the question I have. The question I have is, in the sign permit process, number one, are we evaluating the text that's is that part of the sign permit process? And number two, is there a permit required to freshen up an existing sign on a building?
There is not.
But let's be clear too, and I'd like to comment on this. This is not a sign. It
Well,
is
then why are we
actually-
discussing it under a sign permit process?
It's an architectural
It's
feature
an
of the
architectural
sign.
feature.
Because it was something that the zoning administrator wanted to put
It's
it
a cousin of a
in front
sign.
of the planning commission.
It's like a roof or
Well,
a
I
dormer
can
or
understand
a-
it being akin to a wall sign, which then goes back to my point. Number one, I don't think that he needs a permit to freshen it up. Number two, are we here to talk about in general the text? Because I have an issue with another application, and it's the same issue. It has to do with the text. So if you say, yes, we're here to talk about the text, then I want to talk about it on one of the next applications.
Again, I don't think it's up to us to decide. If a person wants to put up a sign for his business, whatever he wants to say, that's up to him. I don't really think it's our...
So
Is it
just
or isn't
a
it?
point of discussion is that this body's saying that it's not up to this body to decide what is presented on a sign. Yet I know prior
That's
to
not
me
what I'm-
being...
That's not a sign.
Well,
Hold
I
on,
think it is a-
But the statement was made, it's an architectural feature / sign that's built in. The statement that was just made is that it's not up to this body to make a decision on the material on the sign.
Don't talk about the wording.
I disagree.
But what I would state is that historically in the past, this body has made decisions on signs and the material that it represented, whether it was color, whether it was the font, whether it was whatever. So this body does make decisions on what is displayed on a sign.
Well,
But we're talking about the wording, right?
but that may be
Well,
questionable
I
as
think
to
we
whether
have
that
in
was
the past
appropriate.
also made decisions on the what, and I
think they have.
I can go
but-
back and point to an example.
No, I think as far as design details, that's different than wording.
But I think we have in the past, since I've been a member, made comments on wording itself,
Like to change the wording?
to not allow the wording.
There's been times where we've asked,
Well,
can they
for-
take
for-
wording off?
For sizing and stuff. For design cue, but not as far as, I mean, he just wants to add the date. Like I said, I really don't think this applies to this commission.
Heather,
Just for clarification.
are there policies or precedents that might help to clarify this?
This is pretty unique. And I'm sorry, I can't guide you better, but
Okay.
this is a unique,
Okay.
it's an architectural feature, it's an existing building marker, that wants to be freshened. I think that, there's a level of cautiousness with staff to just approve or give the motion to allow something without running it through this body. So
I don't think he even needs to come to this body or to the town. That's my question.
But on his own,
Even
if
need
he
to
were to
come-
change the sign or destroy the sign, that's up to him. And,
It
you know,
is-
and
it
as
is
I
his
agree with
building.
Roxanne, as soon as he changes the sign from its original thing, it's no longer historical.
Well, I think
Now
that's,
it's just another sign.
so it may be a different body that should be reviewing this and not the planning commission.
Well, I'll agree it's not a sign. I'll agree that Mr. Omenka, just like any other property owner, can do with their building within the context of the code. There's nothing in the code that dictates how he needs to end up painting his building per se. So, I mean, I agree with you, Jen, that I don't know if this needs to be brought forward. I mean, I appreciate staff did it. But in
as
that
long as it's
context.
planning commission stating that they don't feel it's under their purview, then that's fine. But we would much rather that be the answer than for something to take place with this marker and then staff be accountable for not running it through. So we can certainly.
Does that require a motion to
Well-
it's not under our purview?
No, I think it's
Or
just a
can you-
statement to say that, I don't think it's a motion, is it? Just for us to say this is in our
Or it's
purview.
just an agreement?
What are you saying, Roxanne?
It dies, I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we just don't need to do anything with it.
But is it possible that you can get that information back to Mr. Omelka who left the meeting? So,
We'll make sure we forward
you know,
it.
his legal standing with Chevrolet is his own business.
Yeah.
And
Well,
if he wants
I
to,
just wanted him to
whatever
be
he wants
aware,
to
and
do,
please
move
share with
forward.
him if he wants to pursue it, because I definitely want to look out for the best
And
interests of
Mr.
the public
Meckel
and
just
businesses.
really had a desire to try to, Ann, if you flip back, You know, some of the, it's not as neat, and he really, he wants to improve the front of his building, and so this is
And I
something that he
applaud
was
that.
proposing.
I think he should.
Well, he's
So-
made a lot of effort.
He has.
His feathers are really ruffled tonight, so let's do the responsible thing and reach out to him and say we don't feel like it's our purview to rule on this, but
Maybe
if
just
you
encourage him to-
wanted to go forward, yeah, he might want
Encourage
to
him
check
to
with him
talk to
himself.
Chevrolet.
Yeah.
And you wanted staff to reach out?
If you would.
Sure.
Just let him know what transpired.
Well, I think that's
Yeah.
the responsible thing to do.
Yeah, no, staff, we're in contact with them
Since you
all the
left the
time.
meeting, I think it would be
I think we have to do
helpful.
that.
Hey, can you make sure he gets that information just for his own benefit?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so we're done that one.
Done with that?
All right, so, Mr. Chairman, do we want to go with Dunkin' Donuts?
We can go with Dunkin' Donuts. Is there any other particular agenda item that anyone's been waiting for?
We're looking to the crowd.
I think we have our
All right.
extended family here.
They are. We should just have them all pull the trigger.
We're gonna make them honorary members at this rate.
Absolutely.
20 minutes to finish this.
20 minutes to play through this?
We,
Sounds good to me. I'm
Yeah.
ready.
well, let me ask you this, just
Where's
a
my
real
cup of
quick
coffee?
assessment. We have a limited period of time. What are the things for sure we want to step through this evening?
The sign permits, we have to.
I
and the
listened to
site
the
plan.
sign stuff, I don't see anything that we can't whip through pretty
So,
quick.
yeah, and the only other thing I'm gonna get to is sign ordinance, which should be really quick.
Okay.
I did.
I don't think so.
Okay,
We're not
okay.
going to.
Let's go, let's go.
All right, let's go.
I'd like to
But
get
we
through it
may
all.
not let
So,
you.
the applicant is Dunkin' Donuts. This is actually continued from last month, if you'll recall.
Yep.
Dunkin' Donuts submitted a sign permit for their location at 1311 South Main Street. At that time, the applicant proposed to install 2 menu board wings, one on each side of the existing menu board. These menu board wings measured 1.5 feet wide by 4.3 in height for a total of 6.4 square feet. The existing menu board sign roughly measures 7 by 7. I have the exact dimensions for you. And the addition of the proposed wings, the new measurement would be 7 feet in height by 10 feet wide. As you know, the Planning Commission did vote to approve the addition, but after some inconsistencies were pointed out, that decision was rescinded. One thing I'd like to clarify is that in the original staff report, references were made to the total amount of the store frontage that was occupied by Dunkin' Donuts. The linear frontage is relative to the amount of wall-mounted sign permittage, but it does not bear any consequence on drive-through menu boards. The drive-through signage was part of the original site plan approval for the addition of the drive-through lanes for the restaurant. This site plan was approved on September 26, 2011 to allow 1 menu board sign not to exceed the dimension of 7 by 7, as well as 2 directional drive-through signs. The applicant's proposal to expand the menu board with wing boards will amend the Planning Commission's approval of the originally approved sign in the site plan, and if approved, could set precedent for the overall permissible sign dimensions for menu boards. As proposed, the current sign ordinance draft suggests that the menu boards be limited to 7 feet in height and 8.5 feet in width. The impact of approving the wing sides would result in this particular menu board expanding 1.5 feet beyond the proposed limitations on this type of signage. Staff does support the use of uniform wing boards that serve as a stationary component of menu boards for establishments with drive-through windows. This is actually preferred to the proliferation of stick signs and banner requests that may occur when products of a limited duration need to be communicated to customers not benefiting from interior advertising of products. Although the town has taken a strong stance against these temporary signs, businesses may risk consequences in order to efficiently communicate their product to consumers. There is a photo attached in your staff report that closely represents what the applicant desires to install. The applicant requested that the allowance of these menu boards be considered at the time of the site plan submission. This was rejected, as this would have resulted a 7 foot in height and 10 foot wide dimension of the actual menu board. From staff's perspective, there is value not only to our businesses but to customers as well to allow the incorporation of interchangeable signage to communicate special offers and products of a limited duration. Our recommendation is as follows. In keeping with the suggested dimensions of menu board signage in the draft sign ordinance, staff supports the addition of one menu board wing to increase the total drive-through menu board sign width to 8.5 feet in width, and would recommend approval as such. And I have added a condition with the condition that an amended site plan page be provided to document the increase in the overall width of the menu board, and that concludes the staff report for that project.
Okay.
So, quick comment.
So, based on your staff report, you're saying that at the time of September 26, 2011, when the site plan was submitted originally, that there was a proposal for the sign that we're talking about to be 7 feet high and 10 feet wide, and that was rejected?
The site plan, yes, they had submitted in their site plan submission, they wanted the menu board plus two wings, and the overall height of 10 feet was rejected.
You mean width, right?
Pardon me?
Width, not height.
I'm sorry, width.
That's okay.
Thank you for correcting me.
And so what was approved was a 7x7 sign.
Right,
and do you recall what how the discussion went and why the 7x10 was rejected, but the 7x7 was allowed?
They just felt that the planning commission at that time felt that the 10 feet was too wide. It was there was a study done of existing menu boards, and that and Tony was actually involved in that. And the 10 feet wide actually exceeded some of the existing menu boards.
Study of existing menu boards in the town?
Yeah, there was some measurements taken.
So how long have we been using the 7 by 8.5?
I can tell you that it was applied in the McDonald's site plan, which was about a year ago. So the proposed draft sign ordinances have been a guide for, quite a long time. So staff is trying to, respect the original decision in the site plan, but by using guidance on the draft sign code as well. So we're trying to achieve a balance.
So what I was torn about with this is that the applicant asked for 2 wings. They didn't ask for, well, I'll accept one if I get it, or I'll accept for any deviations. They just said, I want 2 wings. And if we take their request at face value, it's denied based on the fact that it exceeds the maximum amount of allowable space even using the proposed. Now, hearing what staff said and having 1 wing, I mean, do I think that meets their needs? That's not for me to tell because it's their business. It's what they're trying to do. Do I think it's feasible? Yes, it logically makes sense. They could have 1 wing, and maybe it's the 1 wing that's facing forward so they can show the products. But again,
See, the only thing unique about this one as I look at this picture is that, these wings, they're movable. So it's not like it's this wide. It could actually be like this. When you're looking at it, it's not quite.
but you have to take the max. It's not fixed.
Right.
Now, if they change their sign design and they said it's fixed, and the 1 wing's in that position or something, then yeah, maybe you could shrink down the sign because we don't discuss that. But I think the fact that it's movable. Did you, Heather, reach out to Dunkin' Donuts after my comment about the 2 wings to see if they wanted 1 wing,
They
or
left
were
a
they?
message, they didn't
Okay.
return the call,
So I would like to make a motion.
Are you willing to offer them 7 by 8.5?
I would like to make a motion for the purposes of staying with the recently and historically applied standard of 7 by 8.5 feet, that we deny their request as presented.
Because they're asking for 2?
Because they're asking for more than 7 times 7 feet by 8.5 feet.
7 by 8.5.
Right. Yes?
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
If I remember correctly, when he was here last, he said that he's already ordered the sign, or it's already.
It's in there.
He actually
It's
installed them and then took them back down.
Yeah.
If you look at the wings, the bar that holds the wings on is still gonna be there.
No, they actually took them down. The wings are gone right now. The bars extending off the sides are missing.
Okay, so that does come off.
They're brackets that attach on the side.
Okay, all right.
I actually drove by there
That's gonna look really
today.
stupid just hanging up there like
No.
that. Okay, thank you.
So you have a recommendation?
Yeah, is there a second to Jennifer's motion?
I will second Jennifer's motion.
Okay. Motion has been made and seconded to deny the request. And instead to stay with the most recent 7 by 8.5 dimensions.
It would be 7 by 7.
The one we would make it 7
by 8.5.
7 by 8.5.
7 by 8.5, but he's asking for 2 wings.
But it, yes.
never too soon like that.
8.5.
I'm denying them, I'm making a recommendation to deny the request.
And I second
You don't
it.
need the reason, do you?
It's-
And, I mean, the
So-
reason is
Well-
because it is not in conformance with the
exceeds the size.
approved site plan that shows a 7 by 7.
So all the time.
In addition, it does not meet the currently applied criteria of a maximum width of 8.25 feet, or 8.5 feet.
No, but it does, one wing does, right?
But,
One wing.
That's not the
so-
request.
so
The
my-
request was not to have one wing.
Oh, I see.
Unless this body wants to start figuring out solutions for every single person coming forward, and we're gonna actually be a design firm and do those types of things, then my recommendation would be this body needs to read what's in front of it with staff's recommendation and make a decision just on what's in front of it, instead of, well, what about this, what about this? Because it's pretty clear, they said 2 wings. Now, I won't deny if the candidate wants to come back and say, I'll put 1 wing on, we would review that, because it's within the guidelines of 7 foot by 8.5. But that's not what they asked for.
All right, is there any further discussion on the motion? The motion is to deny the request. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. I vote against. And it passes as a denial. Okay. Parkview Medical. Is it possible to summarize it, or do you feel the need to read it over?
For you, Chairman, I'll summarize it. This is a returning agenda item from the October 28th Planning Commission meeting. As you know, the Parkview Medical Group did install a 60-foot cabinet sign without Planning Commission approval or benefit of a sign permit. In response to the presentation of the staff report regarding signage, questions were raised and clarification was sought at that meeting. Just want to speak a little bit about the actual determination of the building frontage. And there's more supporting explanation described in full in the staff report. The zoning administrator, Mrs. Wirebuck, has determined that this shopping center shall benefit from 2 road frontages. It is situated along 2 major road frontages, being South Main Street and Ridgeville Boulevard. And this is also classified as a multi-story shopping center. And it's a viable shopping center as it was granted special exception approval by the Board of Appeals. Just to give you some additional information, the north elevation measures 193 linear feet and the east elevation measures 160 feet for a total of 309 linear feet. This does result in a total allowance of 309 square feet of signage. There is as far as the existing signage on the building, there is a specific breakdown provided in your staff report. As you will see, there is a total existing signage of 331.79 square feet, and that does include Parkview Medical, as you'll see in there highlighted in yellow. Staff has determined that this, of course, does exceed the allowable amounts. Regarding the design or type of the signage, in 2009, the town worked to lay the foundation to incorporate design standards in building design to require that the architectural elements of buildings as well as signs do meet certain criteria. At that time, the Planning Commission has been guiding that cabinet signs were not a preferred style of signage. And as it does say in your staff report, that there is actually an example of this in the Juvenile Plaza itself. The Family Medical Center did desire to install a cabinet sign and was strongly guided away from the standard cabinet signage. What we have there now, if anybody has gone out and actually looked at the site, it's kind of dark, but it's actually a flat wallboard sign. So after that, staff was able to turn this design standard on this building. The intent was that although it was just one sign, and it wouldn't be aesthetically consistent at that time, any new signage installed on the building would reflect the town's design standards as were guided by the Planning Commission. Just to give you a little bit more background as to the cabinet sign, or the box lit signs that have been rejected by the Planning Commission. At the August 2012 Planning Commission, Verizon Wireless at Ridgeville Business Center was denied the refacing and relocation of an existing cabinet sign to just another elevation. So they had an existing cabinet sign and they wished to put it on a different elevation, and they were not permitted to do so. More recently, in November of 2012, so just a year ago, a signage permit was submitted to allow a cabinet sign for the Allstate office, which is close to the Dunkin' Donuts location. They wanted a cabinet sign. Their request was denied. And basically, after reevaluating all the pertinent facts with regard to this permit application as directed by the Planning Commission, staff does find that the proposed signage exceeds the maximum allowable square footage permitted for this building. Additionally, the cabinet style signage is not a preferred sign design and is not supported by staff. Unfortunately, staff was unsuccessful with their attempts to guide the tenant to propose a different style of signage prior to the Planning Commission for their presentation. And we're not able to support or recommend this signage for approval, but we would still like to work with the applicant. So basically, our recommendation is for the Planning Commission to not accept the signage proposed. And that concludes the staff report.
And the big need of this is that the sign is too big.
It is. And it's a box lit sign.
The type of sign.
It's
They
too
just
big,
put it up and then-
and there's precedent for not proceeding with that style of sign.
So I think the fact that it exceeds the maximum amount of size allotted to the building clearly dictates it's not allowed.
Yeah, I think that's the first form.
Either that or other signs have to come down. Has the applicant said that other signs are going to come down?
No,
Okay.
they have not communicated that.
Okay. Is there a motion to deny the request for approval?
I'll make a motion to deny the request for approval as presented.
I'll second.
Make a motion to deny. Okay.
Motion has been made to deny the approval for the signage. All those in favor, let them know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign.
I'd like to clarify if the Planning Commission's denial is with respect to the design as well.
It's as presented.
Yes, as
Yes,
presented,
as
so it's
presented.
So
both.
that includes, I just want to clarify.
Yes,
That's right.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
In the interest of time, Mr. Chair, I didn't know if it'd be agreeable if we've all looked at the site plans and signs here, if there's any that stand out to anybody that state there's an issue that we want to discuss. The one thing that I'm concerned with is that on the council agenda is 2013-17 sign ordinance, so I didn't know if we need to touch on that because it is on the agenda.
In the process is that if we go beyond a certain time, does not something become deferred to the next meeting?
Right, and that's why I'm concerned about the ordinance that's on the agenda, to set and put it in
Right.
front of council.
Well, yeah, I don't think that's the priority. But we've actually got to 10:30 if we have
Yeah.
to.
Do we?
So,
Okay.
yeah, we do.
Then I will
Alright.
stand down on my request.
Okay, so let's see if we can't step through. I don't think there's major issues with Rick's Chop Shop, Rappaport, or Leslie Consignment. But,
There's one with Leslie.
I have a
so think
concern with
that's the
Leslie.
only one.
okay,
You could waive the reading of the staff reports, Mr. Chair, if you so wish, and just take individual motions.
That's fine.
all right.
Okay.
Is everyone familiar with Rick's Chop Shop?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any issues
Did you get a
there or
chance to read the
concerns
stuff?
anyone has?
Motion to approve as presented.
I second.
All right, motion has been made and seconded to approve Rick's Chop Shop sign permit design as presented. All in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. And it passes unanimously. Okay. Rappaport Companies, Mount Airy Shopping Center. Looks like we're changing out
Mike says.
a couple of the panels there. Jersey Mike Subs is taking a full panel, and New York J&P and
EB&T.
BB&T are
Taking half
sharing,
panels,
yeah, are sharing the other panel.
Make a motion, we approve the sign permit application with design and building materials proposed.
Is there a second?
Second.
All opposed, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, like
He
sign.
said
You
opposed.
did.
All opposed? Okay. Everyone in
I'm
favor,
for it.
let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like
There we
sign.
It was a trick.
All right, that's
It
unanimous.
was, that's why I was
Are
like,
you
I'm
awake
not
or
saying
not?
anything.
You lose me when you get into signs, you really do.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to discuss the Leslie Consignment Gallery
yes.
application.
We've been teeing it up.
Um,
Okay,
Can we,
how do
is
you
it okay
wish
if
to
we waive the
proceed?
staff report and just go right to the discussion?
Go right to the
right.
discussion.
My question with this one has to do with our previous discussion about wording and text on a sign. And if I recall correctly, we had a previous application at the same site a while back where they proposed wording similar to the mattresses, we sell mattresses or something like that. And we denied it, and I believe one of the reasons was because it was not advertising a business, but it was advertising a product or something, but not an actual business name. So my question is, first of all, am I recalling correctly? And secondly, is that something that the commission wishes to discuss? In other words, what they're proposing to put on these two signs is not a business name, but advertising a product.
Well,
I believe what you're recalling is the fact that they wanted to install the Casa de Emporo on the upstairs pumps.
It was the mattress sign that they had put up illegally without a permit.
No, but that wasn't under review because they didn't install that.
No, they had one installed, and it had installed it without.
The Casa de Emporo was what was up for discussion. Ms. Gleason was concerned because they had that violation. She did not want to approve the Casa de Emporo because that violation didn't, because of that violation. That was a condition of that.
Okay, because the violation was that they had the weaves by mattresses.
Right,
Okay.
and that did not get approved.
Okay, so my question then to the commission and to staff is the sign permit process to approve the posting of a sign that doesn't necessarily state a business name?
A business sign is actually defined in the town code, if I may. A sign which directs attention to a business, commodity, service, or other activity conducted upon the premises upon which the sign is located.
To augment what Heather's reading, an open sign is not a business name, but it is something that they can end up having. And we support that within the sign ordinance. I don't necessarily agree with this message, but again, that's, I think, within their right.
Currently, apparently. Okay, so currently based on past and historical procedures, the commission has not made comments or denied a sign per se because of what is
Could
in
it
the wording.
advertise something
Other than a business name.
business name?
Because if you look at most, 99% of the applications I think that we see, at least that since I've been here, it's been a business name and not a commodity that they're, or a service.
And just so I'm clear, Heather,
Yes, sir.
what's the wording? That sounds way too formal, Heather. Yes, sir. What's the wording in the signage that is meant for the monument sign, the 2 panels there, versus the other signage?
What is meant for the,
Aha,
the
there we
panel
go.
is We Buy Gold, and they did not, that is certainly not how it's gonna look. Miss Leslie was having some hard time fitting it in there, but, she wants to, direct her, customers to the fact that they buy gold, and that'll be on the
Okay.
monument sign. It is not a business name. And
Okay.
then when the stairwell, Annalise, can you advance? Thank
All
you.
right.
That, the mattress, operation on the top floor.
So the only comment I have that you were saying is that the monument sign, and Heather, I don't know if it states this in monument signs or not, but they actually have to be businesses within monument signs. If not, we may want to discuss that for the sign ordinance going forward from this, but that monument sign shows 2 businesses. So who's buying gold? Is it Leslie's Consignment or is it the veterinary that's on top?
Does it matter? Since we don't.
Somebody's buying gold. I want to know where to go.
Well, I guess it depends on what our.
I didn't know if
wording-
there's something in monument signs. I doubt there is. Is
what
there?
is the
No,
wording?
not in the current code, and I don't know that there's actually anything specified that would direct us in any certain direction in the proposed, so.
So literally anybody could
Yeah, I
have.
couldn't find anything in the
Okay.
proposed at all.
No, that's a good clarification, so we'll need to fix that.
Okay,
Okay. So we have a staff recommendation to approve, staff recommends approval of the sign design for both the wooden sign at the top of the rear stairs as well as the new panel on the existing monument sign. What is your pleasure?
The logical side of me says, based on the criteria that is established at this time within the side ordinance, and that the application coming from the candidate, they're fully within their rights to request such a sign as defined. Therefore, this body should approve the sign as designed and presented. Or should I say signs, because it's 2 of them.
Okay.
is that your motion?
That is my motion.
Is there a second? I'll second it.
I just, it's very logical what Scott's laid out, it's just the We Buy Gold thing on the monument sign just kind of gets under my skin.
I'm not saying that
No,
I
I know.
agree with their message, but at the same time,
'Cause
that's the part of the sign
like you
ordinance that we
said,
need.
I don't either,
who's
but I
buying gold? Is that a business, We Buy Gold?
When I
that- is
read
that the
it,
name
it
of the
sounds like it's a
business?
business.
Actually, yes, it is. Oh,
that-
there is a We Buy Gold, and it is a business.
Is that the
In this
business
building?
that's-
No. If you Google We Buy Gold,
is this
there
offsite?
there is a.
Offsite advertising?
But I think that's
So-
a latitude they should
But,
have.
but yes. and-
Well, is it or
and-
isn't? I mean,
well, hold on.
under the current so-called ordinance that we don't have, yes.
Even the draft ordinance that we have at this time, because this individual is coming before,
I understand.
we can't. But to Roxanne's point, and this is something I ended up having a discussion with staff, and Heather will appreciate me echoing this, it's not our job to ensure copyright infringements or designs
No.
of infringements on other businesses. That is not the planning commission's. That
agree.
is
Yep.
the business owners. So
I agree.
whatever they want to put forward, as long as it meets that box,
Well, see, that I disagree with, but
whatever
because
meets the box that we defined, fonts, colors,
I understand. But I think
styles.
in the future, we should be considering what type of text, what are they saying on the signs? Yes,
Okay.
because it could be a lot worse.
I agree.
then we buy gold.
I agree.
But we have nothing in our ordinance right now that states that it can't be offensive. There's
I
nothing
agree.
in there.
Point taken. All right. Motion has been made and seconded to
I don't think we have to permit it.
approve the sign design for the installation of the wooden sign and the new panels as proposed. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. It passes.
As a matter of fact, in Washington County where I work, there is language in their sign ordinance specifically regarding offensive material. So,
But they have it written in there.
yes. And so, which is what I'm, my point.
Okay. It's the Sicilian flag. All right.
This is the new
Speaking
one?
of, no, never mind.
I dropped the ball on this. I was supposed to hand this off to you guys, and I sent out a 12th hour email to say that the owner of Mama Angela's was pushing to try to open this additional space next door to his restaurant. As I understand, the heart of this is it's an entirely different type of cuisine that is being served at Mama Angela's. And therefore, he would like the branding and the sign design to reflect that distinction.
So it's a different business?
No, same business.
It's a restaurant.
I've been over there, I went, looked. His Mama Angela's he sells pizza and he sells regular food, and there's a nail salon next to it.
There was a Princess Nails.
He's expanding into that space.
So he's taking over that nail
And that's
space?
gonna be a dining
Oh, wow.
section.
Yes.
What he told me was, because I asked him, he said he's making the kitchen area larger to cook, the cooking area. He's gonna expand the dining into there, so it'll be dining, so there'll be.
He's gonna, yeah.
He's gonna own all three.
Right now,
It's
two signs.
two.
He's
Yeah, but he's
expanding
taking
over
over
there.
Right.
That'll be solely dining, because right now, I don't know if you've ever been in there when it's busy, but you can't get a seat. It's just too small for him.
He's gonna use all the floor space in the former Princess Nails.
But the
and
larger
spa
kitchen
area.
will allow him to do what you were talking about. When Isaac explained it to me, he can't do the kind of cuisine he wants on the kitchen he has. His kitchen is very small. And this will allow him to expand his kitchen to do this, to actually become a full-fledged legitimate restaurant versus a pizza place.
And I don't know if this is primarily seafood based, it's La Terra del Sol or what, but it is Sicilian as opposed to the brand of Italian cuisine he has at Mama.
So Heather, does the proposal meet the sign standards that we have?
So it's just gonna go in that current box for princesses?
Yeah, it's simply just the replacement panel, which the planning commission has been allowing. And we didn't,
So it meets the standards.
we didn't
Okay.
suggest an alternate design, it's what he proposed, so.
All right. And could you put the design that he's,
I think Ann has a
He's
great
advanced. There it is.
rendition of that right there. Thank you, Ann.
I'd like to make a motion, we accept the sign as proposed.
is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, good. Thank you for
Thank you.
including that.
Thank you, Bill, for allowing that. Business owner will be much grateful.
What's next?
Is that all the signs? Are we done with signs?
What's that?
That we are. We do have a site plan for water station number 2.
We're going to do the site plan first, and then we'll do that.
Okay.
Are we doing the downtown thing?
We have that as well.
Site plan.
Barney, do you want to go ahead and do that?
Water station number 2, it's really the last remaining water station that hasn't been upgraded in the past decade, I guess. It's overdue. We've been holding off to see if we're going to be bringing new wells into this station, but the decision finally came that we would go ahead and upgrade it, and it would have the ability to upgrade additional wells should they come across the street in the future. But so the provisions will be there, but not everything will be upgraded to that. So we're basically just upgrading the existing station that's there now. It involves a new building. In order to keep the existing station online while we're building this thing, we have to put the new building in a spot that's, obviously nothing's there right now. So as you come into the gate, this is through the Mount Airy Apartments. When you get to the end of it, when you come into the gate, the existing water station is on the right of the gate, and the new one will be to the left of the gate. But everything will be within the existing fence line, so we're not expanding outside that fence line. I don't know if you want me to read through the whole thing, or basically we've addressed everything as far as future expansion, again, possibility of bringing in 4 production wells from here to Lazier. For future streets and roads, it's access off Watersville Road. No modifications to this will be occurring. Buildings, there will be 2 buildings on the site. 840 square foot building will be installed to house a treatment facility, and a separate 96 square foot building will be installed for well number 5. Well number 5 exists inside the existing water station now, so that side will be a smaller building, and on the left behind it, or to the west of it, will be a larger station.
Now, where is this site relative to the apartments?
It's go all the way through their parking lot. At the very end of that parking lot, at the north end, there's a little driveway up to a fenced-in area.
Okay, there it is. Okay, I see. All right.
I have a question for you, Barney.
Yes.
Currently, your fenced-in area and some of your proposed site features are on or within the state right-of-way? How are you going to deal with it?
The existing water station's in the state right-of-way. It's kind of like a corner, a triangle of it taken off. The new well would be similarly located but smaller. So it won't be going any further into that state right-of-way. Again, we don't plan on changing the fence line that goes into the state right-of-way.
So what about the state?
Well, the site plan is going out to the agencies that we haven't got comments.
Okay. So that you're waiting for their approval?
We need their approval, yes.
So that's how that's going to be handled. If they deny it, you're going to have to relocate it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And part of the recommendation is that all agency comments are addressed.
Okay.
And this is the only pumping station that doesn't have a backup generator?
It's the only one that doesn't have a backup generator. It also only has a single booster pump. So we will be adding a redundant pump where all the other stations already have a redundant pump. So that's the pump that takes the water from that station up to the elevated tank. So we're bringing it up to the same standard that all the other ones are.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yeah.
Make a motion that we approve the site plan for Water Station 2 upgrade with the condition that all town and county comments are addressed.
I'd like to modify the motion, if I may, or request that you modify to add state.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. And with state comments, Barney, you need, or state approval?
Including all town, county, and state comments are addressed. Yeah,
Okay, so
I agree that should have been on there.
let me modify my motion. Make a motion, we approve the site plan for Water Station number 2 upgrade with the condition that all town, county, and state comments are addressed.
All right. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the site plan for Water Station number 2's upgrade with the condition that all town, county, and state comments are addressed. All in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. And it passes.
Thank you.
Okay. So this gets us to the text amendment.
Yeah, this is the staff-initiated text amendment, and it's MAATA 1301. And the purpose of this is to ask for the Planning Commission's consideration to modify the text within the downtown zone to permit fitness studios, clubs, gyms, and other indoor sports facilities. It is currently a prohibited use within the downtown zone, and this is likely due to the size and type of the structure that is associated with these types of uses. We support this prohibition for this use
for standalone structures along Main Street within the downtown zone. But as you know, our Center Street corridor, those areas are zoned downtown zone, and perhaps in the future other areas would be as well. And one of the main focus points of the master plan, and perhaps when talking about a community center or what have you, is to drive people downtown, that this should be the heart of our community. And these recreational uses could be a desirable option for vacant parcels of land, and also could help the rehabilitation and revitalization of existing structures. The proposed text amendment supports the intended direction of commercial growth within existing town centers, which, as you know, is one of the 12 planning visions by the Maryland Department of Planning. The proposed construction of rails to trails pathways and connectivity to parks and other neighboring subdivisions supports the consideration and revisiting of this component of the downtown zone. It's important to note also that all other provisions within the downtown zone would apply to include architectural compatibility. We wouldn't want something that would support this type of use to not be consistent with the architectural nature of our downtown. So this is something that we would ask the Planning Commission to consider. And we entertain any questions. Yes, sir.
How far up Center Street does the downtown zone go?
Currently, I believe it.
Market Plaza, or?
No, that's actually zone community commercial at this time. I believe it cuts off like right before DMS signs.
Okay.
On the south side.
Okay.
And it might have an equal distribution on the north side as well.
I think this is a good idea, personally. Like you said, about the possible community center we've been working towards is certainly a possibility.
Yeah, there's some existing buildings that could also, have the flexibility.
Right. And outside the downtown zone is TriStar Martial Arts, which is it kind of blends right in there.
Community commercial, but and it really, I totally understand it, and I continue to support. As far as, Main Street, Main Street, you do have, some mobility issues as far as parking, perhaps. There's the traffic, but on Center Street, there's more opportunity.
I would like to make a motion if I could.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that that the zoning ordinance be amended to permit fitness studios / gym or clubs or gyms as a special exception allowance along Center Street in the downtown zone.
Is there a second?
Could I have discussion?
Yep.
Can I discuss?
Well, if you made a motion, you have to.
Oh, you can't discuss?
Even discuss. No, once the motion's seconded.
It's been
I'll
made and
second
seconded,
it,
now
and
we
now
can
you can
discuss.
discuss.
Okay,
It's a
thank you.
procedural thing.
Thank you. No, my question is with respect to process. This just moves this forward to a public hearing, is that correct?
That's correct. This would be a recommendation to the town council for a text amendment, and they would go through the public hearing process. It would be advertised twice because it's an amendment of the zoning and subdivision code.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or discussion? All those in favor of Tony's motion, rather, let it move by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign? All right.
Scott, if you could
Good one.
ask Peter if this could be on the agenda, that would be appreciated.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Is that a one thing?
5 minutes.
Okay, any discussion, we're done. Oh, you want to hear about it? The
5
sign
minutes, I
ordinance.
don't think you're gonna get it. There's no way you're gonna get done.
We're not done. I don't think is that what we're discussing next?
I don't think we can do it in 5 minutes.
Well, it depends.
I don't think
I
we can
know
do
I
it in
can't
5
do it in
minutes
5
either.
minutes.
I first want to say that I appreciate the effort that both Scott and Heather have made to redraft this sign ordinance, because in separating out the language and giving us levels of it, and categorizing it it makes it more understandable. And I think instead of 33 pages, you basically got 10, and you've got a frame of reference to consider where does it make sense to take steps to add more detail where we think it may be appropriate, but not overload. And I applaud that effort.
What's the purpose of bringing it forward at this moment?
So the purpose of bringing it forward was a discussion that Heather and I ended up having with regards to the sign ordinance. There was a lot of questions with regards to what signs are approved, not approved, messages you can have, etc. That need was, in my opinion, addressed by this body multiple times through a very large document that tried to do so much in one vehicle. And the thought in working with Heather was that if we reduced it down to smaller chunks, you could process each chunk moving forward and get buy-off. So the intent was to look at what is really critical first, just to get the framework in place, get that bought off on, and then we can start to add additional things, i.e. Lego blocks, to build that framework into a complete document. This initial draft going forward that I wanted to take to council and wanted planning just to see what I was doing, I literally did no changes to the text. I took the last document that this commission ended up presenting forward in its final form and just said, okay, let's go through and redline what's critical, my opinion, that I then vetted over to Heather and said, out of these things, what things do we need first and foremost?
That's in
And
red?
that's the red, blue, and green, respectively.
It's all of them? Or
The
just-
red is what's
Red is what we have right now.
to go, well, there's both. So there was two documents that were sent. There's the red one, and then the paperclip copy is what this commission put together forward, the entire document, color-coded in that standard. So this document is what I wanted to take forward to introduce to the council at the council meeting to say, here's what we think initially we want to get buy-off on. Get the council to look at 10 pages versus a 30-some page document that is easy to digest.
So I was under the wrong impression. I thought what you were asking us to read was the bigger one.
Well, the bigger one you already read and worked on.
No, I didn't, because I
Well,
wasn't here.
The commission actually worked on, and that's
Okay.
what they came up with,
Okay,
and
so-
it brought to the council, and the council at that time said, this thing is just so big, no, and it dropped.
So this is just the red pieces?
Just the red
Okay.
pieces.
All right, thank you for that clarification. All right.
I've got a couple of concerns, Scott. And I don't want to rush into it. As significant a step forward, as constructive as I think it is, I want to give our commission members enough time to look at it and digest it and feel like they're understanding it, and they can see a progression, and they can either agree with the form it's in now, or they can say, I think we need a little bit more of this, and a little bit more of this, and a little bit of that. The other concern I have is we're finding out that a sign ordinance, although it serves many useful purposes, and it's part and parcel and complementary to a developmental vision we have for the town, it's also a lightning rod. It's a very emotional kind of a thing. It can be for businesses, it can be for individuals. And given that reaction to it, the last thing I want to do is for us to be perceived as ramming something down people's throats. I would much rather take a more leisurely approach and have dialogue and have feedback, not unlike, similar to the approach, if you would, that we tried to take in inviting input and cooperation from other commissions and so forth with the master plan. That's a preference on my part, because I think ultimately you will get more buy-in, you'll get more constructive criticism and dialogue, and that may serve us better in the long run in terms of acceptability and even other perspectives. I didn't want to cut that off or to short circuit that.
I don't disagree. I guess I would question how much more dialogue with the other parties would you need, since EDC already reviewed this, Water and Sewer reviewed it, Council's already reviewed it in its entirety, the large document as a whole has already made its rounds all the way through that this body worked on, are you suggesting that you now want to go back and revisit a portion of it, which is all I'm asking, to get out there in front of people to get it read on? Because this was already agreed to by all those parties going through all those different commissions.
Well, actually, it wasn't agreed to.
Let me rephrase that. All of the different parties reviewed and fed into this process for this ordinance in its entirety, the color-coded one, not the subset, which is what I'm saying. We should move forward with a piece to set the foundation. If the piece doesn't fly of what we're saying is critical and council shoots it down, okay, so be it. But the thing I'm going to go back to council is that they need to end up then in turning saying which pieces of this. And as a matter of fact, council could take this whole sign ordinance, the color-coded thing, and make it say whatever they want. Because again, it's planning's recommendation that this is what the ordinance should be.
We had
So I'll defer to you.
Well, we had a fair amount of I don't know if pushback is the right word. I could reach out to Bill back here and he could give us his interpretation, but I know there was some concern by a fairly significant number of members of EDC about the size of it and the intent of it and how large a step we were trying to take.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And some of that content is still in this thing that you put together. It
And,
would be effect to whether it was ever recognized in this thing.
Yeah.
So certainly there is still some content in there that we rejected.
But I think EDC would even agree, not that you're the sole vice of EDC, but you are here, that we do need to have something. We can't just have nothing defined because it's unfair to the businesses coming forward to know what they can and can't do and what's expected and not expected.
Yeah.
So we do need something.
Yeah.
And I think just to sit back and say, well, we don't have anything. You need to start with something and have people gestate from that.
Right, 'cause the whole thing is, it's a giant area of gray.
Yes.
And, just to make, like, to me, I would love to have this thing in place so we never have to look at a sign approval again. So staff can say, oh, you want to put a sign? Here it
Here's a
is.
criteria of it.
I'll agree to
It would
that.
And it's fair to
simplify
staff.
staff's job. We wouldn't have to mess with this stuff. Heck, we'd be done an hour and a half ago. Because I don't like looking at the sign stuff any more than anybody else does. It's just, we have to contend with it. So, and that's what drove this in the first place, was it was just a giant gray cloud out
Well, and
there.
it also drove the fact that, and it's kind of ironic that the individual who asked for it killed it at the same time, but it was asked for by council.
Right.
Now that the master plan has been put out for public hearing and is on the verge of being approved in some form, once the changes from the public have been implemented, this, I think, is going to be one of the next tasks that's going to come back.
Yeah, this has been put on the back burner for quite some time.
I'm just trying to cross off the things that are on the list.
Well,
I'm not married to it, Bill. If you guys want to end up doing something else to it, I appreciate the work Heather put into it for helping me get this tweaked into something that could be presented to council to be introduced. If you want to pull it off and do something with it, that is commission's purview, and I will be more than happy to pull it off the agenda per your recommendation.
I don't know the right answer. The last thing I want is to continue the gray area, because I know how difficult that is day in and day out for staff. Because they live and breathe this thing. And it doesn't make their job easier, it makes it harder.
Right. And Jennifer's correctly made points in the past, like, what do we have on paper now is what we have to go by. And I agree with that.
I mean, to clarify this, the only two things I added since our discussion here that wasn't in here was one about modifying the monument signs to reflect businesses that they're placed in front of, and then the other one was to add a restriction regarding language that is offensive. And I identified the two sections where they probably need to be, but if you don't even want to discuss this right now, then I'll just leave it in draft form and it can be discussed later.
Are you looking for, is this something the planning commission needs to recommend to?
My intent of bringing it to the commission was so that I wasn't working outside of this
Okay.
body, because I have a leg on the commission and I have a leg on council.
Okay.
Since this already came from the commission and this was presented to council, I took the initiative as council liaison and a council member and took a subset of this and said, this is what I'd like to put in front of council for consideration. Because the whole thing in its entirety was shot down, and that's what this body put forward last time.
So Scott, so just lay it out for me. So if this were to get introduced by the council and they accept it, then what happens with this? Is this?
So the next progression,
Would you amend this ordinance?
Amend this afterwards, because the framework would be in place, just like any other ordinance. And it would be to take the next step of the blue sections and say, okay, now, out of the blue and green, what do we think is a mandatory necessary type thing versus it's nice to have if we get it. There's a lot of green text in there that I think is just, it's nice to have, but I'm not gonna die if it wasn't in there.
But I'm
there
saying,
is-
if this gets voted in and becomes ordinance, is it then the point where we're gonna try to make amendments to the ordinance?
Yes.
That are these things?
And take the blue things that were left out last time and then bring in those pieces and say you wanna bolt those on. And then if whatever those get approved, then you look at the last stuff.
That sounds
and
like a
bolt it.
really long process by the way the council moves.
It is a small step forward
No, I
towards the
agree.
bigger thing. If you guys, and I'm just gonna say this up front, and you all know this, if you push the whole thing, it's too big for one person to swallow. It's too big for the council to swallow. It's too big for the commissions to swallow. Break it down however you want. I took a stab at it. Like I said, I'm not married to it, but that was my intent with staff to say, here's something
If this
that.
gets, let me be devil's advocate, if this gets passed as is, does this help staff or not?
Well, it's staff answer.
Well, let's ask staff.
Since staff helped write it.
We need something, and I'm gonna be frank, the sign permits, grow increasingly, more and more difficult, to a certain realm to, work with. There are no firm guidelines. We are basically stating that it's the planning commission's precedent. You know, this is what we're doing, and there allows this area of inconsistency, and it reflects back on staff. So
Is this a big enough bullet, so to speak, to help you, or
if this is
does
what,
this need to be going with it?
no, I mean, these are the critical, the critical elements that are identified that if you guys can live with as being that this is what you're going to accept, this is what you're going to govern. These are the critical elements as to what you're going to oversee. If you can live with this, this will help staff.
And so,
And there will be no more guiding principles into any of the other verbiage until it is actually amended. We cannot go on any longer, in my opinion, just simply stating that it's a preference.
Right, I agree.
and to be clear, when I did this, I did it first, and I gave it to staff and said, you make it so it helps you. Okay? That's what staff did, that's what you got. I didn't do that.
Okay, so let me ask you, if this gets passed and this gets, 10-year approval plan,
Go
will
ahead.
this help you?
That will help me
Oh, I like
if you guys are accepting that those are the only areas that you are going to regulate. If you guys can live with that, it's no more if we follow the guidelines in there and we bring it and we make sure that the sign permit matches all of that, it's not going to be any of the other comments from the other packet. If you guys can live with that, then that's helpful. If the other section is gonna be brought up, well, we really like this, it's
Okay.
not going to
Hey,
help.
Well, if
Another-
this gets passed, do you need to bring signs to us still?
That's a decision this body needs to make.
So I wanted to ask the question a little differently than Tony was gonna ask. If you have this, is this gonna help you in what signs are being brought forward versus those that you can automatically say, I'm sorry, you don't comply because here's a guideline?
Yep.
Well, it needs
So
to be.
this reduces staff's
Is it
amount
in
of
here?
work that they're gonna have to do. It's bringing everything to us.
Okay, is it a concern
Well,
for us that we have, we're missing 2 of our members?
Is that,
Well, you know it.
is that process clear in here?
About
What
the-
needs to come to planning commission and what doesn't?
Well, I believe in here, it's no sign permit, filing the meeting where the planning commission granted their approval, so it still has the planning commission granting approval of signs.
Unless the planning commission, in a side policy statement, grants you the authority to do it for us. And I don't know if that's,
And
we do
that's
that
not
here.
in this thing that says
Right.
that staff is authorized to make decisions for
Okay.
planning. It still comes to
So
planning.
it still has to come to us.
This gives her filtering criteria that says if you don't meet this criteria now, it doesn't even come to planning because you don't meet the criteria.
So would it be, Heather,
Are we
someone
ready to
comes
pick
through,
that
they come
together?
through with a sign, they say, okay, it all checks, and you would say, this guy wants to do a sign that complies with the ordinance.
And if it doesn't,
And we don't review the sign, because it's.
No, we're gonna have
No,
to.
and-
She works with the candidate to tell them you have to conform to the ordinance.
right, if it doesn't conform to this, then they don't go to the planning commission.
Does it say that?
Then it,
Yes.
Because I've, in my other job, have had that issue come up, that if it's not clearly stated that she has the authority to deny, then it has to come
well, I
out
wouldn't be
regardless.
denying, I just wouldn't be, well, I can put
Can
it on
you-
there and it would be
Yeah.
recommend
So,
denial.
so there isn't, don't be under the impression that just because it doesn't meet the ordinance, it doesn't,
You
it
guys
therefore
still
can't
may
come
deal
here.
with it.
Yeah,
Right.
But
unless
it
it
won't
specifically
be,
says so.
going off of precedent and preference.
Right, right.
It has to be codified, it needs to be in legislation.
So it's up to you
I
guys.
think that
So that's the first
I
step.
think what you've done here, I mean, I wasn't part of the original document. All I can tell you is based on my reading of the document, I'm glad you took out most of the blue and green.
I didn't
Thank
think it
goodness.
was their fault. Heather fixed a couple
but
things
I
that I
have-
deleted by accident.
Well, and I had just two comments, if I may,
Mhm.
that of the red pieces, because I
Yep.
read it, the whole thing, that were a little bit concerning to me, and one has to do with the fact that we would allow monument signs for subdivisions in the public right-of-way in a median, that the town is gonna end up having to maintain, or be liable for any,
Well, I think we already have instances where there's monument
I
signs in
know,
the
but this is a
medians.
new ordinance.
But-
Personally,
Yeah.
I have issues as somebody who works for Public Works Department with liability and maintenance responsibility when something's put into the public right of way. So that would be one concern I would have that the town might want to consider.
So addressing that, Heather, would you have any issues if we took out the critical and put it into the blue section?
I'm reading it.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
It's on
Page 4.
And just for
It's
everybody's
actually
reference,
on
because we're
page-
discussing this,
Well, on both,
Where is it?
I've got the two, I'll tell everybody where those two changes were. for
It's
the two
actually
percent.
under subdivision identity sign, I.
What
Or
page you on?
4 is
no,
it?
It's on, it says
is it
pages
the one
are in
with
the
this
corner.
color? This is the
No, because
one,
I only read
She's
this.
in the full.
no, it's that,
So it was red because,
So what I'm thinking about with this particular line is like, for instance, Nottingham, when you go on Loxley, there's,
yeah, there's a sign
Yeah.
right
it's
in
on
the middle.
well, no,
Yeah,
it's
it's in
on
the
the
median.
it's off the side, but
Yeah.
in the median, there's a little sign, it's
Yeah.
their little island, they maintain landscaping.
Right.
Is
And
that
that-
what you
Yeah,
don't like?
absolutely.
Okay.
So which one are you
Because it
looking
will
at?
be a liability for the town. If somebody has an accident, they run in that sign, if there's no other legal documentation that exempts the town from a liability, the town will be liable because it's in their right of way.
this is the subdivision identity sign,
Yeah,
I.
yeah. I don't know
Town
what
signs
you were
and
talking, where you're looking at.
She's probably looking in the red document.
Oh,
which
under
is gonna be a
definition.
Different, I'll tell you the cross page.
What's the,
It's
Scott,
the
Yeah.
4.9, page
Yeah,
4.
exactly. Yeah, that statement, or in the median or on a public or private right of way. The other one had to do with the statement that it's assumed that the property owner is given permission and consents for the placement of a sign on their property. This was under G. And so that was previously political sign, is that right?
Which number?
Political sign?
Yeah, what about it?
Well, there was a statement in there before, let me see if it's still in there. About, it shall be presumed the property owner is given permission or consents
Okay,
to
that
the
was
sign
number 3.
placement unless the property owner notifies the town otherwise. I don't know,
I don't even see
number
what that
one,
is.
why that has to be in
You're
there.
on 4.7, page 4 of the,
Unless you go ahead and include the first sentence.
I don't know why, number one, it has to be in there, and number two, how legally that could be, that statement. Is that a legal statement?
So
Just
I
because
think,
a sign's on somebody's
I
property.
think the intent of that statement from the original sign thing, because I wasn't a part of it, that's when you guys were working on it, is that although the town can say, we approve political signs, you have to have the agreement with the property owner to put your sign there. That's not on the
So
town.
why is this in our ordinance, that statement to come out?
Because it
This is-
says we're allowing political signs, but you have to work out. We're
It's just saying
defining it's
that
not a town.
they don't need a permit from us to do it.
Then say that.
It does say it.
Why do you need to have
It
that
does.
statement in
It does-
there?
It does say it.
Political signs shall be allowed without a sign permit.
Without a sign permit.
It's no different than us saying, but you gotta make sure what you state on your business sign isn't a trademark and blah, blah, blah.
Well, no, the intent was addressing any kind of sign in town. We gotta say a political sign. We can't say yes or no. It's just.
But
doesn't
this
need-
What I'm saying is, it's not the town's responsibility to dictate to determine whether the property owner gives permission, which is what you're trying to say, but why do you have to say that in the ordinance? You're not saying all the other things that the town's not responsible for in this ordinance.
So, well, no, we have a code enforcement issue.
I'm concerned,
We have a code enforcement issue. The code enforcement officer has to go around. When I ran for political, we had to pull our signs out in a certain time frame because if we
Right.
didn't, we ended up getting in trouble with the town.
okay, who's gonna get in trouble? Who's gonna get in trouble?
don't do
Never
that.
mind. Okay,
They
well,
can
we
put
can
them up
scrap
now.
that line. It can be pulled out.
I have a problem with it from a property owner standpoint,
Okay.
not from a planning commission standpoint, for the property owner
But again,
standpoint.
the intent was,
It's
anybody
just-
can have a political sign, you can't say
Which
no,
signs have to
doesn't need a
have permission
permit,
and
but it's gotta
permits and
be
which
on the
don't.
property owner's property, not
So,
on the
to
town.
be fair, I'm
I
not
don't
gonna
understand why
die
it has
over
to
this
be there.
one sentence. If this one sentence is the part that you don't like about the political sign, I'm fine with it not being in the critical part of it. We can strike it.
Yeah, I don't think that's critical.
Okay. I'm fine with striking that. It can be added to the blue or the green text and we can discuss it later.
Okay.
I just
I
don't
would
think it's a
prefer
big deal.
That's why I said I'm not gonna die on it.
I'm
It's a
just
big
saying,
deal
it
for me.
doesn't need a sign permit, it's just gotta be on someone's property, not in the public right of way.
So
Because
then-
public right of way meaning,
So there's
Why-
no reason to have it in there. If it's not a big deal and you don't think it's critical, then why is it in there?
no, I mean,
I understand both your points and I think for simplicity,
Sorry.
since I
It's
was
getting
bringing it
late.
forward, we'll just strike it for now and I'll worry
No,
about
but
it.
it-
I get testy
No,
when
no,
it's
no.
like.
I'm just saying, the
Way past
idea
my
was
business.
if someone's gonna put up a sign, they don't need a permit, but it's gotta be on someone's property, not on,
So,
Okay,
where
so
it could be
stay
blocking.
that.
That's what it says.
so Jen,
No, it says it's presumed
Already
that the
is.
property owner gives permission. That's different.
It just says assumed it is. It doesn't.
It shall
That's
be
different
presumed the
than
property owner.
saying that it cannot be in
No,
the
it
public
says it
right of way.
can't, but it says that.
If you'd like to say it can't be in the public right of way, I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with the statement that says it's presumed that the property owner gives permission. That's what I have. a
That's
problem
fine. So
We
the
can-
third
we can-
sentence, hold on. The third sentence is shall be presumed the property owner has
Yeah.
given permission or consents to the sign's placement
That's
unless
the one I
property. We will strike that sentence,
thank you.
okay?
Right,
Easy.
strike the sentence, that's fine.
Perfect.
Okay.
Sorry
I
to
just wanna
hold
make
you
sure
up.
it can't be in the public right of way and it doesn't need a permit.
It's fine.
The election rules shouldn't even be in the sign one.
It's fine. It's out.
Thank you.
Any other one?